Okay, we'll call to order the May 22nd, 2024 Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Bobby, call the roll, please.
Paul Fisher.
Here.
Joan Kovac.
Here.
Tundra King.
Here.
Derek Lewis.
Here.
Darlene Smith.
Here.
Carla Coleman.
Here.
Fred Stacer.
Here. Okay. As is our tradition at this point in the meeting, we will have a 30-second moment of silence, if you would. Please be quiet for the next 30 seconds. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the April 24th meeting. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move they be approved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Any adjustments or changes? Yes, Bobby, you're looking at me like you want to say something.
I just want to put on the record that I did make the change from that you
okay.
talked to me about, that Darlene
The
Coleman.
personnel change? Okay.
Yes, the combined.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, Bobby, call the roll on that item.
Joan Kovac.
Yes.
Tundra King.
Yes.
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Darlene Smith.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes, thank you. Next item on our agenda is individuals need to be placed under oath. So if you would like to speak tonight, this time please stand, raise your right hand, and Bobby will swear you in, please. Thank you.
Alrighty. If you'd like to speak tonight, please stand and raise your right hand.
I believe I didn't bring one in.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next item on the, first item on the agenda tonight is Covent Garden Site Plan. Major Site Plan 21-12-4031, 900 to 140 Northwest, thank you, Northwest 27th Avenue. Mrs. Gratzer, go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and Board members. Lauren Gratzer, Development Services. The applicant for Covent Gardens has requested postponement for this item.
Okay.
They'll be here next month.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to postpone this item.
Move that we postpone the
Mr. Lewis, and a
Covent
second?
Gardens, yeah.
Yes, and Mrs.
Second.
A second, okay. Any questions on the motion to postpone? Just one thing for the record, council, so this is number 2 for them, so they either show up next time or it gets stricken? Okay, just so everybody understands. Okay, with that, Bobby, call the roll on item number 1, please.
Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Tundra King.
Yes.
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Joan Kovac.
Yes.
Darlene Smith.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is number 2. That's because it always comes after number 1. 911 East Atlantic Boulevard. Major site plan, 23-12-4043. And address, of course, is 911 East Atlantic Boulevard. Mrs. Stanton, you're presenting first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, Pamela Stanton with Development Services. This agenda item is for consideration of the major site plan application for 911 East Atlantic. Mixed-use development at 911 East Atlantic Boulevard. It's in the transit-oriented East Overlay District, and approximately half of the property is in the center sub-area of the EOD and half in the edge sub-area. There's approximately 9,100 square feet of commercial use, with most of that in the area of the central sub-area, the center sub-area on the ground floor along Atlantic Boulevard. And the project has 78 dwelling units. Project site is on the north side of Atlantic, about halfway between North Federal Highway and Dixie. Here's the overall site plan. The great majority of the required parking is within the structure that's on the first and second levels. Approximately half of the parking in the center and half in the edge sub-area. Mentioned that the project has 78 dwelling units. Now 53 of those units are
Can you-
by right.
Mrs. Stanton, can you hold on just a second? We're having a hard time
Yeah,
getting.
mine isn't coming
We
with.
can't get
We
the
can't-
presentation up on our screens.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. No, I started jumping around too, and everybody's saying the same thing, so.
Want to go back?
No,
I-
just
I-
to be
I
able to see what you're
Yeah.
Sure.
giving us.
Oh, you didn't get yours clicked? What happened?
Thank you.
Tundras didn't come up.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody good? We're all good?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Stanton. You're fine starting where you're at, that's fine.
Okay, so you can see on the site plan, there's a red line about at the middle of the site plan that divides the center sub-area on the south half and the edge sub-area on the north half. And I mentioned that the project has 78 dwelling units. Now 53 of those are by right. So to get to 78 units, 2 density bonuses are applied. The public art density bonus, and the second one is the increased sustainable development density bonus. Density bonuses are available in the center and core sub-areas only and not available in the edge sub-area. So the density is increased in the center of the sub-area of the project from 38 units to 63 units via these density bonuses. And here's the south portion of the site. You can see the commercial area along the Atlantic Boulevard frontage. Most of the commercial is along Atlantic. Some of it is around the corner. And this is the north portion with 5 walk-up units, ground floor walk-up units, townhouse-style apartments. I didn't want to do that. There. Here's the east building elevation. You can also see the rooftop amenities. This shows how the building transitions on the left side, which is the south side in the center along Atlantic, goes from the 5 stories that you can see here, and then transitions down closer towards the single-family homes in the edge sub-area to 3 stories. With that, we have the department recommendations. Should the board find that the application has provided competent substantial evidence to satisfy the review standards for major site plan approval, the Development Services Department recommends including the following conditions. 1, density bonus option number 1 was selected in order to qualify for an additional 20 units per acre in the center sub-area portion of the project. The applicant has proposed to locate artwork on the site. Clarify where the artwork will be located on the site so that the artwork will be accessible to the public. The artwork may be displayed in public open spaces or areas along the street abutting the building. The art must receive a recommendation by the Public Art Committee and an approval from the City Commission. Funds or an appropriate bonding instrument must be placed in escrow at the time of building permit and will be held until the art is approved after installation. 2, density bonus option number 3 was selected in order to qualify for an additional 20 units per acre in the center sub-area portion of the project. The applicant has proposed to provide 28 sustainable development points from Table 155-5802 as amended and must provide evidence that indicates compliance with the selected options from the table prior to permit approval. 3, the sustainability narrative includes 4 100-square-foot rain gardens for 4 sustainable development points. Table 155-5802 states that the rain gardens must consist of native plant material. Revise the landscape plan to replace the Alocasia odora, California, with a native plant for the rain gardens. 4, specify a color for the wall behind the faux window grill shown on the elevations to create the appearance of a window behind the grill. 5, last, standard conditions of approval and/or specifications required prior to building permit zoning compliance permit issuance. If you have any questions, I'm here. We also have the architect as well.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, go ahead, Mrs.
I have a
Kovac.
question. Someplace in my backup material, I found a reference to non-accessory commercial. Can you explain what that is or give me an example of it?
Non-accessory commercial.
Yes.
Do you know where in your backup?
That on the first floor. Someplace in my backup material, I read that.
Oh, okay, thank you, Jean. It was, just non-accessory means that it's open to the public and can be used by anyone, not just the residents.
So it would be perhaps on the first floor, but they wouldn't be able to access it
Everybody would be able to access.
on the ground floor? Okay,
Everybody would be able to use it.
okay, thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Coleman,
I've got some questions, but I think they're more
for the applicant?
applicant.
Okay. Anybody else? We're good? Okay. Mr. Applicant, would you like to come up, name and address for the record, and go ahead and make your presentation, sir?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Seth Yeslow with Stephen L. Cohen & Associates. We're the architects for the project, located at 5295 Town Center Road in Boca Raton, Florida, Suite 202, zip code's 33486. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight to discuss the 911 East Atlantic project. The site is approximately 1.3 acres in size and located between East Atlantic Boulevard and Northeast 1st Street along Northeast 10th Avenue, which, as Pamela explained, places it in the EOD and TO overlay districts with both edge and center sub-area designations. The project consists of a total of 78 units, with 73 apartment units and the 5 townhouse-style apartment units lining Northeast 1st Street. Additionally, there will be approximately 8,212 square feet of retail space, fully accessible by the public along Atlantic Boulevard, and over 29,000 square feet of amenity areas spread between the ground level, the amenity decks on level 3 and 4, and the main roof. The 78 units represent an allowable density under the code regulations obtained through the density bonuses, as Pamela explained. The parking on the site exceeds the zoning requirements, with 127 spaces provided compared to the 113 required. The parking spaces are accommodated in a 2-level parking structure integrated within the building design and either screened from the street by habitable spaces or with architectural treatments. The parking structure contains 109 spaces, with 9 of those spaces being dedicated as EV, electrical vehicle charging stations, supplemented with an additional 18 on-street parallel parking spaces along all 3 building frontages, which helps improve the streetscape design and manages traffic flow effectively. The proposed design is a contemporary design, yet subdued, aiming to complement the aesthetics of the surrounding neighborhood while also adding a modern touch to represent the neighborhood's growth. Through a combination of vibrant yet simple colors and clean materials, we establish a consistent architectural theme that harmonizes with the surrounding built environment. The placement of the structures and open spaces has been carefully planned to consider neighborhood properties, with particular attention given to the linear outdoor plaza along East Atlantic Boulevard. Additionally, the main building facade design incorporates a 10 by 30 forecourt located at the midpoint of East Atlantic. The forecourt serves as both a focal point of the exterior facade and the primary entrance into the retail area. Building heights range from 5 stories in the center sub-area to 3 stories in the edge, where the townhouse-style units are located. Decorative canopy elements at the roof levels and the amenity decks wrap the building and provide functional use as shade structures for the usable rooftop areas while adding facade articulation to the architectural design. The design of the east building facade along Northeast 10th serves as a continuation of the residential and retail component as it wraps around the publicly accessible outdoor plaza on the southeast corner and transitions to the vehicular entry at the parking structure. This linear facade also features a 10 by 30 forecourt that serves as the entry to the two-story leasing management area, which is in, see my cursor right over here.
Okay.
With additional residential units and amenity spaces above it in that part of the structure. The two-story townhouse-style apartment units are located on the north side of the building, lining Northeast 1st Street, with an additional level of multifamily units above it. This placement facilitates direct access to the ground level, to the townhouse-style units, directly from the street front, and provides a transition to the surrounding neighborhood on the north, consisting of single-family homes and duplexes. The street front design is spacious for the community to utilize and enjoy and provides a consistent landscape buffer between the building and public sidewalks, interspersed with the walk-up entries to the units, and the addition of a third 10 by 30 forecourt area that provides access to the inline units along Northeast 1st. The west elevation is the only interior lot line on the site and faces the adjacent properties. To enhance its appearance, decorative faux window grills are proposed for the parking structure facade that will have an accent gray painted wall behind it to create the impression of glazing. And along with perforated metal panels and faux green landscaped walls, as shown on the facade, to create additional articulation. The materials there have long lifespans, minimum of 10 years. They're UV resistant, so they will maintain their look and appearance over time. Finally, retail and residential spaces along Atlantic and Northeast 10th are designed with vibrant colors found throughout the building exterior, including light blue painted stucco for building edges and balcony floors, copper-colored perforated aluminum screens, and balcony railings. On the north facade, where the walk-up townhouse-style apartments are located, the predominant feature is a proposed rustic orange painted stucco, evoking a warm feeling for the area and creating, again, a smooth transition from the more commercial zone to the more residential zone. Social activities take place throughout the private open spaces I mentioned earlier that are exclusive for the residents. These spaces include a spacious passive amenity deck on level 3 above the parking structure, connected via a sculptural walkway, you can see here in the rendering, to the pool deck and amenity area on level 4. Additionally, a small dog walk amenity area is also provided on the main roof here, above the southeast corner of the building. So again, it gives you, we'll have views and we'll be able to look down onto the public plaza below. Just some final thoughts, some additional features on the building. You can see some of the landscape imagery for the amenity decks. The south and east facade design will include large spans of storefront glazing at the commercial and retail areas, utilizing low E glazing. The faux window grills, as I mentioned, and perforated panels have the specialty color finish. And we discussed the faux green landscape walls that will articulate the west facade. And finally, the project has been fully designed to comply with SEPTED standards for natural surveillance, access control, territorial reinforcement, maintenance, and support. So that's our presentation. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions? Mrs. Coleman?
Can you walk us through where your trash area is?
Yes, let me go back to the site plan. I don't know if you need me to zoom in, but if you can see here, there is a trash chute for the building that comes down into this main trash room here. So this is a double height area, so the trucks can come in. You can see the turning radius is identified, load up, dedicated back up on the opposite side of the entry drive, again with the required turning radiuses for the trucks to leave the site. All contained within the site, all meeting the height clearances and lift requirements of the sanitation department.
Now, that's on 5-story side?
It is under, the main trash area itself is under the 5-story side. The backup area falls within the 3-story side, but all within the parking structure that is screened from the street. So all of that operation and movement will not be visible from anyone on the street front, with the exception of when the trucks pull in and out.
How about bike racks?
There are bike racks provided both for long-term, short-term parking for people visiting the commercial, as well as long-term parking for the residents.
Okay. I had one other, just a second here. What is the height of your commercial space? Ceiling height?
The floor-to-floor, I can pull up the elevation. I believe it's approximately 13 feet. 14 feet, sorry, Pamela corrected me, it's 14 feet.
14 feet. Do you have any idea what you're putting in any of the commercial spaces yet?
Not at this time.
Okay, but you're sure that 14 feet's going to be high enough?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Kovac, go ahead.
Can you show us where the rain gardens are going to be located on site?
There are rain gardens located along Northeast 10th and also along Northeast 1st Street. I believe they are identified here and in this area and in this area over here. I think there's 4 in total that are provided throughout the site.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mrs. King, go ahead.
I saw some parking spaces on the front, I think on Atlantic. Will there be some parking available on that side or on the east side for rideshare or Uber, since you will have a lot of commercial?
As of right now, the parking is not dedicated. I don't believe it is required to be. Those are, operational provisions that certainly our client is here, can hear your comments and entertain. I don't believe any have to be formally dedicated for that type of use.
No, so a person wouldn't be able to just maybe pull on one of the, either to the east or near Atlantic, to just pull to pick somebody up?
Yeah, if
for-
you can see the loading area, there's a kind of an on-street loading area here. If you see the striped area that's shown here.
I do.
It's formally, that's a fire lane, so normally it has to be obstructed. I do know some cities have had, you can use it for a very short period of time for like pickup and drop off. Obviously, an emergency vehicle comes, you have to move immediately. I do know in some cities, the fire lane can double as a short-term drop-off area. So that's something we could look into if the city staff is.
Yes, I wouldn't want you stopping in the police wouldn't want you stopping in the fire lanes.
No.
If there are some other,
It has been allowed in others, I do know
understand.
other municipalities do allow for like 5 minutes at the most.
Thank you.
Just following up with the.
Lewis, go ahead.
Sorry, sir, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Following up with the street parking, I see that there's already street parking in the existing structure, let's say, or I guess the existing area. Is there any, I guess, consideration for a bike lane? It looked like maybe in one of the renderings there was a bike lane set up through the area.
All of the streetscape design, there is a bike lane along Atlantic. All of the streetscape designs follow the city's master plan that has specific right-of-way widths, provisions. There is a bike lane along East Atlantic that is per the streetscape design guidelines. But all of the streets have been designed in accordance with the master plan.
Anybody else? I had a couple questions. I know there was some discussion, or there was a condition about the artwork. Have you guys thought about that? Is it like going to potentially be on that southeast corner?
That is the plan, yes, sir.
Yeah, so that'll just be worked out with the urban forester as far as moving the trees in those areas and stuff?
Sir, but that is the place that the intention for the
So that'll be
plantings.
the maximum exposure to that piece
Exactly.
of art? Okay. I noticed that, I guess this was from the urban forester, but, so the back street, whatever that is, First Street, I guess, so it has, basically, it's lined with yellow tabs and orange and royal poincianas, so that street's gonna be pretty colorful back there, I would imagine, in the blooming season. And then in the front, on the Atlantic side, it was more shade trees, which makes a lot of sense because of the walking. That would be the area you would expect people to walk more, so those will hopefully create the canopy, our little miniature Barcelona or something going on here, so anyway. Okay, I think that's good by me. Anybody else have any questions? Does anybody in the audience want to speak on this item? If you would, come on up. Say your name and address, please.
Sorry, Audrey Fezzik, 412 Briney Avenue. I just wanted to say, if I ever am in need of an architect, I will probably call you. I would like to really, my only comment is the consideration that I've seen for the neighborhood, the taking advantage of the usable space so far from looking at the plans, taking advantage of the usable space, and also trying to make everything fit while being considerate of your neighbors is very much appreciated, and the fact that you probably could have gone a little higher but did not and chose differently, I appreciate that as well. I just want to say, from a neighborhood that would like a little structure changes, I really just wanted to tell you that from what you've presented, I just want to say kudos. Thank you for that.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Mr. Fisher, would you like?
Just want to confirm these are good with all the conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Record.
Okay, so you have 5 conditions of staff, sir? You have 5 conditions of staff. Would you put on the record you're in agreement with those 5 conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Bobby, or no, I guess we got to have a motion first. Chair will entertain a motion on this item.
Chair,
Yes, Ms. Kovac, go ahead.
seeing that the applicant has provided competent, substantial evidence to satisfy the major site plan approval, I move that we recommend approval of the site plan subject to the conditions outlined in our report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Bobby, call the roll on item number 2, please.
Joan Kovac,
Yes.
Tundra King,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Darlene Smith,
Yes.
Carla Coleman,
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes, thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 3, rezoning live PCD text amendment. P&Z 24-13502. Address is 777 Isle of Capri Circle. Mr. Weems, how are you this evening? Good to see you, and you're presenting, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Doing fine. Good to see you as well.
Thank you.
Max Weems, Development Services. So this is for the Live Resorts Pompano rezoning. The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property from amended PCD, Planned Commercial Development, to amended PCD, Planned Commercial Development. This property is 232.05 gross acres and consists of 9 separate parcels at the moment. And it's located at the property known for Harrah's Casino. I think we're all familiar. The general location of the proposed rezoning is the southeast corner of Power Line Road and southwest 3rd Street, or Racetrack Road. The site was rezoned in 2019 to PCD to encourage a mix of employment-generating uses, entertainment uses.
Max, pull this closer to you.
We can hear me now?
Yep, that's a little better. Thank you.
So the site was rezoned to PCD in 2019 to encourage a mix of employment-generating uses, entertainment uses, and residential uses. It was then amended in 2021, well, October of 2020, to allow for the incorporation of an industrial park on the east side of the PCD master plan with an emphasis on warehouse and distribution type uses. The application now is to amend the PCD to allow for light manufacturing uses, which are presently permitted in I-1 districts generally, and also may be permitted within PCD districts. The final adoption documents for this amendment would include a complete PD document and master plan, but for ease of review and to better focus on the proposed amendments proposed at this time, a strike-through and underline format of only the altered document, which is Exhibit Q of the ordinance, are provided. All other previously reviewed PCD and zoning code regulations will continue to apply. The staff report provides a complete history of the approvals and the entitlements for this planned development, as well as an overview of the zoning regulations which apply for the industrial portion of this PCD. This amendment proposes no changes to the land use entitlements. The industrial uses are presently permitted within the district, within a district of the PCD. The land use and PCD permit 1.5 million square feet of industrial uses. The uses presently permitted are general industrial services, audio, visual recording and production studio, repair or scientific or professional instruments, warehouse, distribution or storage, and showroom or other wholesale uses. This plan is an exhibit to the PCD E1. It demonstrates the different zones of the district, but the point of this one is to show this red dashed line. Everything east of this dashed line within the district is that area in which industrial uses may be permitted. The applicant is proposing to add the following industrial uses, which would then also be permitted east of that red dashed line. Electric motor repair, in manufacturing, assembly, or fabrication light. No other changes are proposed with this amendment, and the proposed uses are equally compatible as the existing permitted uses supported by the comprehensive plan and the plan development regulations. To speak a little bit about compatibility, to the north of this PCD is a B3 PCI and I1 PCI district, which generally includes commercial and industrial uses. To the south is RM45, which is the Cypress Bend condominium. The southern area of the industrial portion includes a 50-foot landscape buffer and a 20-foot sound wall required by the ordinance, as well as a 200-foot area restricted to landscaping and parking. The site plan that's proposed for this site includes a lake that extends well beyond the 200-foot buffer that is required by this PCD. Of course, that's a site plan, so those are not requirements of the ordinance, but just to provide some context to the site. To the east of the district is an I-1 district, as well as the Tri-Rail and CSX train tracks. To the west is Palmer, but that's across the remainder of the PCD district and then across Powerline Road. To touch on the rezoning standards, the rezoning review standards, consistency with the land use categories, supported by the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, consistent with other city-adopted plans, as well as compatibility with the existing and proposed adjacent uses. The area, the land use is Regional Activity Center, and that remains unchanged. The proposal is supported by the GOPS related to this proposal, as well as the industrial uses that are amended with this PCD. It is supported by the city's strategic plan, and it is equally compatible as the existing uses in the PCD with the adjacent uses and the buffers that exist within the ordinance as well as the site plan. Staff finds that the amended PCD as proposed is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies as outlined in the staff report of the comprehensive plan. Given the information provided to the board as a finding of fact in the staff report, staff provides the following recommendation of approval, which may be revised or modified at the board's discretion. Staff finds that there's sufficient information to support this rezoning. The applicant has worked with staff to provide the necessary information to show the rezoning meets the intended goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan to support this request for the rezoning, which again is to introduce those specific uses to Exhibit Q. I'm available for questions for staff, and the applicant is here for a presentation as well.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of staff before? Yes, Mrs. Kovac, go ahead.
Max, I was surprised to see under the uses for PCD, waste composting facility. Seems like that doesn't fit.
Sure. So the 2020 amendment included waste composting facilities as an accessory to an industrial use. And at the time, that was identified as like a small facility within an industrial use for, like, I guess, cardboard recycling and these types of things. So it just a centralized waste composting facility presently permitted for the district, not a part of this application.
I still don't think it fits. Okay.
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 Before we go on, and I don't want to forget to do this, I've had ex parte communication with the staff of the applicant, and nothing that was said there will impede me from listening just to the evidence tonight and ruling on the evidence as such that's presented. Anybody else have any other questions of staff before we move on? Okay. We have an applicant? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jana Loda. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Holland & Knight, with offices at 515 East Las Olas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm here tonight on behalf of Pompano Park JV Land Holdings, the developer of the Live Resorts Pompano project. We're before you this evening requesting your favorable recommendation on our application seeking a rezoning of the Live Resorts PCD. As you'll see in a moment, the rezoning, while technically a rezoning application, essentially seeks to just update Exhibit Q to the PCD, and I'll actually show you those two slides, to allow these two additional industrial uses within the industrial park component of the PCD where they're currently not allowed. Before I get there, though, I'd like to provide you with a quick update on the overall project. There's been a lot going on out at the park, and we just want to make sure that you're aware of all the different moving pieces since it was first before you back in 2019 when the PCD was originally approved. As you can see in this rendering, and this rendering is somewhat dated, but it does provide a good glimpse from the north looking south. You see the Top Golf facility. That's been site planned, permitted, built, and is open and operational. Hopefully one or all of you have been able to visit that facility. The grocery anchored retail that's at the northwest corner of the PCD, at the corner of Powerline and Racetrack Roads. That site plan, as well as the live venue district that's located to the southeast, have all been approved in terms of site plan, are currently in for their building permit as we speak. I'll turn now just to like the overall kind of master plan that shows the pods. You see again the grocery anchored retail at the northwest corner, Top Golf to the east, the live venue just to the south. For the casino, they're in the process of completing their outdoor patio renovation and extension, as well as the renovations on the interior of the casino. You see here in purple the industrial development. You'll hear in a moment one of the reasons for the request that's before you tonight is that when the use was approved back in 2020 by the city, it was intended that there was a single user for the property. That is no longer the case. What you see in front of you is the site plan that was approved by the city since then to provide for a multi-building light industrial park. The lake that you see south of the casino, that has been constructed and is in place. At the southwest corner is the Indigo Pompano Beach. That is a mid-rise, largely mid-rise residential project that has been approved by this board and is currently in for building permit as we speak. The owner is currently placing the infrastructure in for the loop road that you see to the west of the industrial park, and then the main street that's just to the other side of the lake will be following shortly. It's our understanding that the industrial development will likely break ground sometime by the end of the summer. So now turning back to the rezoning application that's before you, and again, we're seeking to essentially add back in to the PCD two industrial uses to give greater flexibility to the park in terms of attracting tenants to that park, consistent with other light, high-tech industrial parks. The first is manufacturing, fabrication, or assembly light, which includes as a subcategory uses advanced machinery, technology repair, services, all in an enclosed and orderly space. And that's very important because nothing that we're proposing here includes any outdoor use or outdoor storage. And all of this is to allow for the repair, service, and assembly of advanced machinery and technology, including but not limited to jet engines. And no, they're not going to be operating in the building. They need to be attached to a plane, but rather just to do that kind of assembly and repair work. Because aerospace, as many of you probably know, is a growing industry here in Southeast Florida, as well as advanced medical equipment and advanced electronics. We also are seeking to include electric motor repair because, as you can see, it's included by nature in the subset, and just to avoid any confusion moving forward. With respect to the hybrid and electric motors, so that you understand, my understanding is this does not include your traditional auto repair or whatnot. If you looked at Exhibit Q, you'll see those are still prohibited uses within the PCD. Again, I've already mentioned one of the reasons that we're asking for this change is that back when the PCD was approved to allow the industrial component, there was at that time a single user that was pretty much just a distribution warehouse. So a lot of the other uses were just struck at that time as unnecessary. Now that we have a multi-tenant park, it's become readily apparent to attract the type of high-tech, high-end, good-paying, skilled worker jobs. We need to add a little bit greater flexibility to the park owner and would like to reintroduce these uses. Here is the consolidated use table. Exhibit Q is effectively the consolidated use table for the city of Pompano Beach that you see in your land development code. And what they did is when we introduced the industrial uses, they went through and you'll see there's a lot in the red text and strike, a host of uses were eliminated. And still will remain eliminated from the park. This sheet just is the change to the one sheet in the consolidated use table to add back in the electric motor repair. And then this one you see, we're looking to add in the manufacturing, assembly and fabrication light. Again, those other heavy industrial uses, many of which you see here that are struck with red text, will remain unpermitted within the PCD. Those are those heavy industrial uses, concrete batching plants, fuel storage, all of that are not permitted as principal uses within PCD. And the reason why, included in the application were a number of different case studies. The first one here is Man Engines. They are a strong local employer here in Pompano Beach. And these are just some examples of employers that are local, that may be in the near future looking to lease space. And with the current restrictions that we have in the PCD, we're not even able to attract them to the park. One other example is Allegheny Technologies. They produce materials for the aerospace, defense, and energy and medical sectors. All of these tenants provide wages for skilled workers above the average in the state of Florida and even in the city of Pompano Beach. All work within an enclosed space and kind of deliver that type of tenant that we're looking to have here in the park. And my last example, again, building upon the aerospace industry, which is, again, a growing industry here in Florida, certainly Southeast Florida, is Boeing Distribution Services. And as I was sitting here, I thought of another example that, again, of something that is a tool that we have here in Broward County, and that is the concept of a foreign trade zone. We have a foreign trade zone in our port, and you can take a leased space anywhere else in the county and get it qualified to be part of that zone to receive component parts from outside the country, assemble them, which is what the use that we're asking to have added, in that enclosed space, and then export back out, providing all of those jobs here locally. But it's a tool that is used often by our economic development team. But presently, we can't even offer that because we don't allow the assembly of those component parts here within the park. But the addition of the light industrial would allow that. So I'll just real quickly conclude. I just want to emphasize a few things. One, and I think staff indicated, nothing that we're asking here tonight is going to request any other changes to the PCD, meaning any of the requirements, any of the conditions of our development order remain unchanged. So for example, one of the conditions for the industrial park is that all truck traffic has to enter and leave from the east. That does not change. All of the buffers, anything that we committed to with respect to the buffering and whatnot, remain unchanged. I know there was a question, we're providing some enhanced landscaping along the loop road adjacent to the industrial park. That continues through. Essentially, anything that's required by the PCD development order remains in place. All this does is give the industrial park the tools it needs to remain competitive and attract the types of tenants you would expect in a high-end, high-tech, light industrial park and provide the high quality of jobs that we want for the residents here in Pompano Beach. With respect to the criteria, since staff did an excellent job in going through all the criteria for rezoning, I'll simply refer to the staff report and ask that it be included as part of my presentation. And again, we respectfully request your favorable recommendation on this application. I'm available to answer any questions, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Coleman, go ahead.
I feel like we're on a slippery slope here. First of all, there was to be no industrial at this site originally. And in the hopes of getting a single user, we kind of swallowed hard and did that. And we approved a very tight site plan meant to minimize heavy industrial uses on this site. And now we're talking about foreign trade zones, electric motor repairs, jet engines. I know you say it's going to be enclosed spaces, but that, I will tell you that that does not really fit with what my vision of what this whole redevelopment was going to look like and what it was going to be. And I just feel like we're on a slippery slope on adding back in all of these industrial uses for what was never meant to be a heavy industrial place. I understand the client, your client wanting to have as many industrial uses as possible, but we don't know of a single client who's going to go in there yet. And I just think it's a little early to be adding more intense uses back in.
May I respond?
Can you please respond to that?
Absolutely. I wish I had the entire consolidated use table for the industrial uses, and you would see.
I know them well. I know what they are.
Then I'm sure then you can appreciate that the heavy industrial uses are not permitted within this PCD. We have tried to approach this with a laser focus with what was needed for the park, understanding the history of this project. So I truly believe that it is needed to allow for the leasing of this industrial park to develop it the way that the city intends in terms of being a high-tech type of high-end light industrial park, providing those skilled jobs, which is, I think, what everybody wants. To the extent that we wanted to do anything more that was heavy industrial, we would have to come back before this board and the city and to request those uses. But I can tell you right now, that is not the intent that's been explained to me. Again, we are looking for a very laser focus just to allow those higher end tenants to be able to come into the space. And to the extent that you're concerned that we don't have tenants lined up, I can't speak to whether or not they have any prospective tenants that may be waiting for this particular rezoning to be approved. But I will tell you that, you know, it's a competitive market out there, and if you can't deliver soon, you'll lose that tenant to another park. So we're just trying to put this park, which is 1.5 million square feet, the site plan's been approved for it, in the best position possible to be successful.
Okay. Anybody else right now? Go ahead, Mrs. Smith.
Just want to clarify that the industrial, all the 18-wheelers is off the table.
Well,
Where we were originally, we had approved it before so that the distribution, the trucks coming and going into the middle.
That's staying the same. I mean, to the extent that there's truck traffic accessing this park, they're going to still access the park from the east, meaning from Andrews Avenue, and leave towards Andrews Avenue. So they won't leave going west or enter from the west. That remains unchanged.
But it won't be the primary use of the industrial park, because before it was all distribution.
I think we all know who the user was, and there was a heavy amount of traffic associated with that use.
Right.
Certainly that traffic, because of that type of user, is not going to be there. There's this, now the intent is that because we have this, and I'll go back to get back to the master plan, because it does provide you a little bit of an overview of the site plan. We have obviously an array of buildings with any the extent there's any trucks, box trucks or whatever that are accessing those tenant bays. They're within the you can see that it's on the inside where the two buildings back up.
Correct.
With all of the vehicular parkings on the outside. The warehouse showroom is targeted towards the north end and towards the commercial uses to the west. It's been kind of planned out that way in the site plan. But any truck traffic coming or leaving will go to east.
And I liked how the development has the trucks coming into the middle, thought that was a great solution when we were looking to shield the residential area and Cypress Bend from all the trucks. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, sorry that we went through all that to get to this point, but isn't it better to employ high-end techs in our city and provide a place that they can come and work, earn good dollars, spend it in the city, and live here, than to have just trucks come in and go in and not really contributing to the city of Pompano Beach? Just kind of in the back of my mind.
And to your point, in the case studies that we provided, if you compare like just a typical warehouse worker, distribution worker to the
Right.
other type of jobs that are being proposed, it's a night and day in terms of the salaries and the wages. One thing that this doesn't show, because it's just the actual kind of like site plan, is to buffer, as you know, the access is to the north from the industrial park,
Correct.
but also there's a large lake and landscape buffer that's being proposed south of the industrial park, as well as the landscaping along the loop road. You can't see it from this exhibit because that wasn't really here tonight, but that is proposed as part of the site plan, as well as a large wall and whatnot.
Yes, Mrs. Kovac.
I have to agree with Mrs. Coleman. I think we're a long ways from the original plans that we saw for this site, which were to be resort, casino, entertainment, a real site to draw people in from all over the country. Heavy industrial doesn't fit there. And this sort of thing that you're suggesting isn't heavy industrial. It just doesn't fit.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mrs. King, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to see if there were anyone from the audience that wanted to chime in on this before I ask my question, perhaps?
Okay.
We're not there yet.
Is everybody done? Okay.
I don't mean to be out of order. I'll just wait
Well,
till
at
we
this
finish
po-
our question.
Yeah, I was gonna run through some stuff too, but if you wanna
No,
hold off
no,
on
no,
yours,
Mr.
you
Chair, go
can.
ahead. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to speak before I do? Okay. Let me start with the recycling thing that they were talking about. That I built about 10 years ago. I built in addition to the manufacturing plant where they build. It's the world's largest manufacturing plant for yachts in Pompano, and they use that composting. They call it composting, but what it actually is they're taking the garbage that comes from the bags that people are eating in their own cafeteria and stuff like that, and then they compact those, okay, and that is like in the plant that I was building. They take that and then they burn it, and literally a plant. When you do all this fancy recycling, and I believe this is an impetus of what you would try to do in a place like this, they literally had a plant 110,000 feet that was manufacturing over $100 million in air conditioning for yachts, and they were putting out less than 5 gallons of waste a week. But it was because they were taking that and composting it, compacting it, and then they burn it. So there's a real reason for doing that has to do purely with recycling. It doesn't have to do with, hey, we're taking the guy down the street and taking his garbage and we're compacting it and then we're setting it in the back like you do in your own yard, and you're composting all your vegetables or whatever it is that you're composting. It's not the same effect in a commercial application. It's really designed to improve recycling, and it's not like as a separate use. It's really complementary to the user themselves, and it really is a very effective way, because as we all know, that landfill is, as Mrs. Dolan likes to say, it's pretty full. So we're trying to keep the amount that goes to the landfill to a minimum, and so this is one fashion that they do that. So I didn't want to leave you with the idea that this was some place that they were going to be out in the back of the place composting or something. That's not really what happens in a place like this.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. I want to put a couple other things on the record before we go to the public. None of this manufacturing and/or any of the storage that your tenants would do is going to be outdoor.
No,
Is that
sir.
correct?
And in fact, if you look at the definition for light manufacturing, assembly, and fabrication in the city code, it literally says, such uses are wholly confined within an enclosed building, do not include the processing of hazardous gases and chemicals, do not emit noxious noise, smoke, vapors, fumes, dust, glare, odor, or vibration. So everything is enclosed, and again, the intent is to attract those type of high-tech users that typically work in a very clean, orderly space, just because of the nature of what they're producing.
And one of the things that you kind of alluded to had to do with some of the things that over the course of the evolution of this industrial side of this property, one of the things that happened from the time that Magic Company A, who went away, from that time, this new industrial area has a much larger lake than it had in the beginning, Company A was going to put their tractor trailers all on the south end, and they run like 6 or 7 hours while they're loading them, and that was going to which would have been directly adjacent to about 200 feet from these other people. Now, you did have a buffer wall, but you still have a large buffer wall, and you have landscaping on both sides of that buffer wall, and now you're farther away, and in fact, the tractor trailers are hidden by the southernmost building. So everything is contained, and the only way you can see down those runs is if you were on the loop road and you were 10 or 12 feet tall and you could look over the berm and magically wall and everything, you might be able to see down there where those tractor trailers are. But it's not that way.
This is actually where
Originally.
any of like the box trucks, tractor trailers for like would go, and literally the building, as you can see, it kind of phalanges out, actually hide the physical parking of those. Oh,
Into the microphone, please, ma'am.
I'm a righty, not a lefty.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the interior. These are like basically the back side of the two buildings. So the vehicular parking is all what you see kind of here along the customer, the employee vehicles. The actual trucks pull in between these two buildings and then would back into any loading dock. And as you can see, the buildings actually kind of are built out so that way that parking is actually recessed.
Okay. I think for now, I will just go ahead and open it up to the public. So anybody want to speak on this in the public can come up, and you can come to the microphone and give us your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Sandra Hickox.
Speak in the mic. Speak in the mic, ma'am. Thank you.
My name is Sandra Hickox. I'm the president of Cypress Bend Condo 4.
Okay.
I also live in the building that's about 400 feet from the wall. When you speak about the barrier that people can't see across, if you're on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th floor, you can definitely see it. That's one of my things. I think that it would be a loss of the peace and tranquility that comes with homeownership. Parking lot and other lights would be on 24/7, so people would need blackout curtains or something. The trucks running their air conditioner all day is spewing carcinogenics, diesel, and whatever that we have to smell. There's constant noise from the truck and the businesses itself. There's too much traffic that will be coming out wherever it comes out to, because there are going to be hotels and things like that. There's going to be a lot more traffic, and it will impact us whichever way we go. And the testing of the jet engines, I can't imagine a jet engine noise that would be contained in any building. Those are my main concerns, and I have some other property owners here with me that feel the same way. And we ask that you do not approve this as presented.
Okay. Next.
Ma'am, just before you leave, ma'am, can you just put your address on for the record, please?
Excuse me?
Your address, please.
It's on the paper that I filled out when I came in.
Can you just speak it into the microphone, please?
It's on the paper that I filled out when I came in.
It's got to go on the record.
Oh, it's 2216 North Cypress Bend Drive, Unit 203, Pompano Beach, Florida, 33069.
Thank you very much,
ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening. How are you doing today? Brian Smith, 220 Southeast 3rd Ave, Pompano Beach. If I may ask the representative a couple of questions. Are we talking about like burning of carcinogens? What is the zoning change required? Like for the industrial use, it's not like burning, not like.
No, we didn't.
It's
I'm
just
not
a
sure
standard
what
industrial use,
what exactly carcinogens you're talking about. It's not going to burn recycling material or anything
Well,
like
you
that.
were talking about recycling materials.
No. She asked me a question about, she was asking a question about like waste. Like the waste in an individual unit.
Okay.
And that's why I was clearing the record, because that's not at all, you couldn't even do it in regular I-1. You
Okay,
have to
sorry,
do that
I
in
came in late on
I-1X,
the
and it's a very
conversation. That was the
specialized
wrong
area.
question.
This place was not ever approved for anything close to that.
So it's just a standard industrial use.
It's less than a standard industrial use. They have
Industrial.
a very limited portion of the use categories within what we call I-1, which is the standard industrial properties.
All right, so when I came in, my conversation that I heard was misled, and I apologize, so I'm good.
That's fine.
Thank you.
We're here to try to make sure everybody's understanding, for sure. Next.
Yes, hi, my name's Patrick McCarthy. I live at 2226 North Cypress Bend Drive, apartment 504. I've lived there, I've owned there for over 20 years. My building actually faces directly to the live. We got a road between that comes down Cypress Bend, North Cypress Bend Drive. On the other side of that road is the borderline for the live. So my question is there a sound barrier wall going up there, and how tall is it? Between Cypress Bend and live.
Adjacent to the industrial portion, a 20-foot sound wall is required.
Okay, 20-foot sound, okay. I had another question, I just forgot what it was. So being on the 5th floor, what the lady was talking about before me, I'm on the 5th floor of a 5-story. We'll just see right over that. So we'll see all the industrial part. So my concern is the noise. My concern is my resale of my property, my condo. How's this gonna affect my condo? Because my building faces that. That's my concern.
Okay. If you want to speak to that, you can. I don't know. It's kind of
Again, I would
speculative.
turn back to the, first off, just to point out that the industrial here, the industrial park has been permitted and site planned already. All we're seeking to do is to allow a little bit greater flexibility for the uses that will be inside those buildings that are not changing any of the building footprints, circulation, anything that's already been approved by the city. And I will just turn back again to the requirement of the city code with respect to manufacturing, assembly, and fabrication light uses that specifically provides that they have to be wholly confined within an enclosed building and don't include the processing of hazardous gases and chemicals, do not emit noxious noise, smoke, vapors, fumes, dust, glare, odors, or vibration. I also would impress that the city does have a noise ordinance that we will of course be required to comply with. So I hope that answers your question, but my understanding is that, and I get some of the questions we got with respect to jet engines. I'll make sure that I get that information. I don't believe that they necessarily test them because of what they are. But
Right.
I will get that information to have it for any future hearings on this to allay any concerns by the community.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker.
Short people. Ann Bosworth, 4015 West Palmyra Drive, number 408, Pompano Beach. I just want to take a moment to follow up on what someone had said earlier, which was to commend the folks for the 911 East Atlantic for working so hard to really include the neighborhood and the mood and the mode of the neighborhood. That is so much appreciated and seems lacking in so many other things, perhaps including this one for the live PCD rezoning change. One of the concerns I have is that very often whenever we as residents are being sold on these developments, we're kind of put in a position to be sort of for or against development, which really isn't the case. Most of us are happy to have nice development, such as what we saw. This kind of strikes me as a little bit of a bill of goods in a certain way. That property really ought never to have been developed to have any kind of industrial footprint. It's an entertainment zone. Why have we not seen a hotel or something like that added there? Why aren't there other entertainment venues being included there rather than light industrial? So that's just kind of a rhetorical question. You all can answer that whether you choose to or not. But for me, the other thing is the promise of these high-paying jobs. We've heard it before. Number one, we don't necessarily have people living here who want those jobs, and you may think you can attract them, but very often what happens is when the employer comes in, he pays the wages that are common in the area rather than the industry standard. And so we're promised, these high-paying jobs so that people can afford to live in all of the luxury units that are being built here, because everything is being sold to us as luxury. And I'm like, but who can afford all of that? So I want to know, where do these numbers come from for these jobs? Are these made-up numbers? Are these kind of generalized numbers? Or are these numbers that the companies have promised to pay should they relocate here? Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Included in the backup, and it's a public record, are 4 different case studies that were prepared that were based on information as far as wages that are published for prospective target tenants. And for all of them, you will see what is like the Florida minimum wage as well as the Pompano average warehouse wage, which was by and large the employee of the former user number A. And it then provides for that company what are their, again, Glassdoor and other places publish what the hourly wages are for the different types of jobs that they would typically have at a facility like that. Now, I can't tell you that these exact 4 are going to be prospective tenants, but what I can tell you is that without the ability to allow a company to even assemble component parts to send out or to repair high, MRI machines, things like that, we don't even have the tool to even attract them. And that's kind of why we're here tonight. So is to at least give us the tools that we need in hopes of attracting the very tenants to provide those jobs, whether the employees live here or not, but to bring that economy here into the city of Pompano Beach.
Okay. No. Wait, no. You have to talk into the mic. This is on record.
You agree, right? So a company that may be based somewhere else, right? They pay maybe employees who live in New York City wages that are comparable to New York City. And so whatever their wages are will be comparable to other manufacturers here in Florida. And we're in flux, right? So there's not really, I don't really trust exactly the standard that's being used to measure that.
I will tell you that the case studies that we used are actually local businesses. So,
Okay, thank you. Next speaker?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Paparella. I live in at 2216 North Cypress Bend, apartment 504. It's the same building as Mrs. Hickox and Mr. Lilla here. Well, I couldn't agree more with the last speaker. I don't think it should ever have been zoned for industrial. I mean, our building is about 400 feet from where I would estimate, and we never got really any good maps. But I would estimate these buildings are going to start. And also, I don't think you could build a berm or trees that are going to go up any higher than, I don't know, a couple of stories. So I wholeheartedly agree. And the wages as well. She's right. Did I hear you say that there won't be any 18-wheelers?
No.
Jana Loda, once again, I believe the point that was made was by the chair that with the prior site plan and the prior user, that it was proposing 18-wheelers parked along the south side. What I'm saying is that the design now has that any trucks that come in, which may be box trucks, which may be 18-wheelers, are going to be parked on the inside of the two buildings backing up and are still going to be entering and leaving the site from the east.
Okay, so I understand that point. I mean, let me just say that diesel fume within itself, the EPA regards as a carcinogen. So you got our buildings near a bunch of 18-wheelers, and by the way, are these buildings going to operate 24/7?
I was going to say that.
I can't answer that question. That's going to be ultimately up to the individual tenant business. I would say a distribution use like tenant A was probably more likely to operate 24/7, but a lot of times your traditional industrial uses operate during the day. I can't speak to that. That's going to be an end user question.
Thank you. Jet engine, I was shocked. I mean, sounds like great stuff, but I mean, you're putting it right in the midst of a large residential area just to the south, and I mean, you've got to test these engines. Years and years ago when I was younger, I drove an 18-wheeler, and I drove to Connecticut every day, and one of the places I delivered to was Pratt & Whitney. If you've ever seen a jet engine, they're a monster, and they make a lot of noise, and I don't see how you can build a jet engine without testing it. Also, the lighting. I think you're going to have 24/7 lighting, and on these top floors, anything above the second floor, of course, I'm guessing, I'm estimating, but it's going to interfere with as homeowners, our right to privacy and tranquility, at least to some extent. That's about all I have. I just worry about this 24/7 thing, the lighting, the fumes, and within the fumes, the diesel fumes themselves are carcinogen and such, and thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Weems, can you get up, since this has come up a couple of times, do you know what our sound ordinances are in terms of what sound crosses across the property line?
I cannot speak to the specifics of the sound ordinance beyond saying that we have one.
Yeah.
I'm happy to look it up.
You can probably look it up. And also, like light spillage, that I know is, I think in commercial, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 3 lumens or less or something like that, or
right
at the property line. So even if you have bright lights, whatever, that are 200, 300 feet away, they can't transmit light past their property line to the south.
That's
and it's a pretty de minimis number. I think commercial might be as high as 3 lumens, and it might be as low in residential at like 1 lumen or something. You can't even see your hand hardly at 1 lumen at night.
The lumen measurements are taken from the ground at the property line.
Right.
And the spillage is measured from the fixture itself. And so there's actually glare control that's required. So there's no spillage that's permitted off-site, and there have to be shields.
Shielded.
Any lights that are mounted above
Okay.
normal height. So that there's not any kind of direct visibility of the source of the light.
Okay. All right. Somebody else wanted to speak? Anybody else? Okay, let this lady go first. In the meantime, you're going to look up the sound ordinance, please? Okay, thank you.
I didn't come prepared to speak about this, but my name is Janice Juanchermino. I live at 777 South Federal Highway in Pompano, and I just did a quick search on Google with compost facilities, and the problems are numerous with them. There's just odors, nuisance, complaints, bad management, odors. It's just, they go on and on and on, and I'm wondering.
Composting's not going to be allowed here in terms of a facility that composts like recycling plants.
It's not.
No, it's only for the individual users taking their garbage, and there's an ability to accessory. They can compost their own stuff, as I had spoken before, where they do it internally, and then they compact it, and then they ship it off to somebody who burns it. So it's not like you're gonna, it's not gonna, they're not gonna bring everybody like from Palm Air is gonna come over and dump a bunch of live stuff in the back of these warehouses or something. That's not gonna happen.
I thought Waste Management would be bringing materials over. That's what I'm sorry, like I said, I just found out about that.
No, composting and recycling plants, I mean, I built like 5 recycling plants, and yes, it's very noxious. I am 100% with you. But that's not what's going to be allowed here. That's not allowed in this zoning.
So there won't be any odors or anything coming from this?
I can't speak for the fact that somebody may have something that has an odor, you know.
Will that be
but it's not
monitored?
like they're going to be creating a big pile of compost. If that's what when you start talking about composting in terms of like a composting place, like a recycling plant, that's completely different than what's allowed as an accessory to an individual person's business. And they may have, 20 employees, and if you take 20 employees who have 20 lunches times 5 times, it might be 100 bags of trash in there, and they may, in the interim, compost it before the recycling compacting company comes and takes it away. It's not going to change how they dispose of that, and they're not going to be able to put it outside and put it on a pile where people down the street are going to smell it. That's not what's going to happen.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood.
No problem.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And we would like people to understand what it is we're talking about, for sure. Okay.
I'm Sandra Hickox again. I just wanted to ask a question.
Okay.
The lady said that there was a decimal level that it would not go past. I just wanted that it wouldn't go above it.
Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Williams, did you find that yet?
Yeah, the day and night volumes are the same. It's 65 decibels. I don't know what that means, you know?
Okay. Okay.
I do only because I'm in the process of permitting a mine. So 60 dBA is normal conversation, just so you know.
It's like what we're doing right now.
65 is just slightly above that.
Okay, so a jet engine is well over 100, 110, so they're not going to allow them to run jet engines.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is the railroad track that runs.
Oh, that's definitely louder than 65.
Yes.
Yeah, that railroad track that runs right by Cypress Bend all the time,
Yes.
every day?
It's about-
Yes, it's definitely
no
more than,
one's
it's probably closer
controlling
to
it.
100,
So how
depending
can
on where you're at.
guarantee that you're going to control that?
Well, no.
Can we control did you ask me whether we can control the railroad? Wow.
I'm asking you who's in charge.
Of controlling the railroad?
No.
Oh.
Of controlling the decibel level.
Our code enforcement, our own code enforcement.
Okay.
I'm
That's
sorry.
what I was
I
asking.
misunderstood you. I was like, wow. So you must think I'm really powerful if you think I can stop the railroad from running.
I think you probably are, but that
No,
was
I'm not
the
at all.
question.
Believe me, I'm
Okay,
not at all.
thank you.
You had another question?
I do, sir. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention was, in terms of the place should have never, well, I can't say that because the whole place is going to be a lot of hotels and condos. But these trucks, the trucks that are leaving, I think they're going to come out on Racetrack. They're going to take a left to get on the freeway now. They're going to have to
No, they're
take a
going to take
left
a right.
onto
When
Andrews.
they're leaving, they have to take a right. They have forced traffic. Now, I can't stop them from going down the street a mile and turning around.
No. I could be wrong about this, but aren't they going to have to go down, to get on the freeway, the quickest way? It seems to me, when I would go to work.
If you're asking me if they're going to be able to turn left out of there, they're not.
No, I'm not asking that.
Okay, well, you just said that. That's why
I said left?
You said left. Yes, sir.
Then I apologize. So you're all right, so you're taking a right, and I could be wrong. I assume you're going down to get on the freeway. The quickest way would be to take a left on Andrews and a right onto Atlantic. When you've got several trailer trucks in your way and you're trying to go to work in the morning, it's going to be a problem. That's one issue. And the other issue was the lighting again. Ma'am, did you say that the lighting, we won't be able to see any lighting?
No.
I believe staff responded to that. The city has photometric requirements for any development that it is required to meet. This project met the city's photometric requirements to ensure that that we didn't exceed the light standards at the property line. I believe what Mr. Weems said is that to the extent there's any light fixtures that are elevated, that they're required to be downcast so that there is no light spillage or glare or anything like that off of the property. And I don't know if I said that correctly, Matt.
Yeah, just to say it another way, if you're elevated on a balcony and able to see over the wall and the trees in the buildings, and there's light shining on the building, you'll see that because it'll be a lit building. But in terms of light projected away from the property, it won't spill off the property line. And if measured from across the property, you won't be picking up the light from that source, is the way the code is provided. So like see how these lights, you can see the source and they're providing light on the ground. The code requires on an exterior, you will not be able to see the source, but of course you'll be able to see that the ground is lit.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, well, I think the lighting, the 24/7, probably 24/7 lighting is going to be an issue, but thank you.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the issues regarding lighting, the hours, even the potential truck traffic in and out of the site, again, the use is approved, the site plan's approved. I don't believe that changes material with the request that's before you.
Okay. Anybody else from the audience? Okay, in that case, I'll close the public hearing. Does anybody on the board have any other questions right now? Because I do. So there's a few things that we want to, I think that I would like to get onto the record. And I'm not sure who's best to do this because you weren't representing them in the beginning. Is there somebody who can speak to the traffic studies and the scheduling of traffic improvements that are being done off-site by your client? No? How about your project manager? I bet you that lady back there can. She's pretty, I've listened to her talk. She's pretty sharp. I bet you she knows her schedule.
Well, I will defer.
Okay. Name and address for the record, just.
Jamila Glapione, working out of 550 Main Street, Pompano Beach.
Were you sworn in?
I was not.
Okay, so let's swear her in right now.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. So can
I'm
you
on behalf of Pompano Park
Yes.
Joint Venture Development.
Sure.
Relative to the off-site property improvements, we have actually already started that work both on Powerline Road and Racetrack Road. We anticipate that Racetrack on the east end in front of the industrial should be complete early 2025, and the entire road being complete by the end of 2025. Powerline Road has improvements going all the way up to Atlantic, and these improvements are specific in order to widen the roads, in order to diminish the amount of traffic that is anticipated with the overall development. And so Powerline Road, we anticipate that that work will be done by the end of 2025 as well.
Those improvements are paid for by your company?
Yes, and we also absorbed for Broward County had improvements that they were planning to make along Racetrack Road. We actually decided that we would pay for those improvements so that they could all happen simultaneously rather than adding to the time factor of the improvements that Broward County will be doing in addition to our work. We probably absorbed about $6 million worth of work from Broward County. Powerline Road is an FDOT road. We absorbed all of the work that FDOT was originally going to do on the west side, southbound lanes of Powerline Road, as well as the shared use path that they were going to put in so that people from Cypress Bend, as example, would actually have a pathway in order to walk safely along Powerline Road northbound. So we have absorbed those two, which is probably about another about $4 million worth of added improvements that we have absorbed ourselves, not including impact fees, permitting fees, and things like that.
And
It's just straight construction.
there, at one time, and I'm not sure, I'm sure you know this, so I'm not trying to speak out of turn, but originally, there was something like somewhere between 12 and 16 intersections that were studied in your original traffic study. Does that sound about right?
Between both roads combined, correct.
Okay, and because of what is becoming the final, as we get closer and closer to those final designs, and the intensity levels are not as high as the loop originally allowed. So all of those improvements that were at one time considered are the impacts of your facility are going to be significantly less than what originally was approved from the initial loop. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So you had the improvements. Just so I understand, because I might have quite missed this. The improvements that are south of Palm Drive on Powerline Road, those, you said, are those the ones that are scheduled to be done by, like, going into the winter of this year? I mean, like, of 25?
On Powerline Road specific, south of Palmair?
Yes.
Okay, so we've already started that work. If you are driving down Powerline now, you can actually see where the shared use path will be. We've got probably in that stretch of land, we've installed so far 12 of the upgraded drainage system, because as you know, in Pompano Beach, we don't have very good drainage. So part of the improvements on both roads is adding significant drainage system. We will also be adding a lift station in order to handle all of the waste that will come from the overall 290 acres, as well as our lake that we installed, which is now 13 acres in size. It was substantially smaller when we initially started the PCD, and it grew significantly in order to handle all of the additional drainage that's anticipated from the overall facility and development. So substantial drainage going on those exterior roads, all backing back into our stormwater lake that we have now completed construction of. Which should make some significant, positive.
Now, when you say that lake, is that the lake in the middle, the lake, or the lake south of the industrial
That is the
Or
lake
both?
in the middle.
It's the one in the middle?
Yes.
Okay. But you still have a lake that is south of the industrial.
Yes, that entire area south of the industrial building, the southernmost
Southernmost,
industrial
yeah.
building, that whole entire area will also be a lake for stormwater drainage, specifically for the industrial development.
Oh, okay, so it's self-contained with that
It's
lake?
self-contained
And
within
then
that.
the other lake is for the balance of the property?
Yes.
Okay.
So our lake actually will handle more water than initially anticipated because we did initially include drainage for the industrial parcel when it was tenant A. And now that the new tenant has come up with a redesign of the system, they have included their own additional retention basin as well to add to anything that would happen because of the surface area within the buildings.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your, because I don't know that I quite understood what that scheduling was. So the area where up in the northwest quadrant, which is where the Publix is, I think as you are able to eliminate the existing temporary lake that's along Powerline Road, is that like, is that area like ready to be cut and balanced, or where are you guys at on that northwest corner?
The Northwest Retail Development, we are awaiting permitting.
Okay, so it's just a matter of you'll start whenever the permits are done through, and when you say the permits, you're talking about the building permits basically for the I'm sorry? Yes, no, I understand that, but I'm saying, so whenever those building permits come out, you guys are ready to start on that, and that is also true of the apartment complex on the south end?
Yes, the apartment complex to the south, Indigo Pompano Beach, we are anticipating that they will be getting their building permits early summer so that they can start groundbreaking at late summer.
Okay, and I know you have like a 50-foot mound or whatever it is on the very south end. You do have to raise that area over what it was, not what it is today, but over what it was, and so you're going to push the balance of it into the temporary lake as it's able to be filled? Or what are you doing? I assume you're going to move that fill out of their way.
The fill that is currently sitting to the south portion of Indigo Pompano Beach's parcel.
Right.
Let's see, about 15,000 cubic yards of that will actually be for grading just of Indigo
bring the pads
Pompano
up.
Beach. We have some grading that is needed relative to building Main Street.
Okay.
There will be the infill of the temp basin in this area here, where we have the temp basin to currently handle Topgolf's
Sure.
Drainage until all the road system is complete. And the buildup of the live block to also bring that to floodplain.
Where the entertainment area is going to be and stuff. And where are you? Are you close? You think? I realize it's roughed out and whatever. Where the Publix and stuff is you think that fill situation is not a lot? Unlike that big pile on the south end, it's fairly close on your cut.
The Northwest Retail Development, based on studies, we believe that will be closer to a balanced site as is.
Gotcha.
But if we do need to send any soils over there, between what industrial development is going to generate building their lake, which is also 12 feet deep,
Sure.
we have more than enough to not have to require any import of fill. If anything, towards the
You
end
may
of the
be
project,
selling
we might
fill.
be selling export.
Sure. Okay, and so that's not going to hold you up on that northwest quadrant. It's just a matter of the permitting at this point then.
Correct.
Okay, and is there any anticipation on that? Or is it fall, or do you have an idea yet? Or are you not far enough along to answer?
We're
that
hoping
question?
permits are out within the next 2 months.
Oh, so you're
all the
still
fingers
hoping
and
that's
toes are
summertime as well then?
crossed. Yeah.
So you'd like to be in the ground both places at the same time then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, significant construction starting towards the end of the summer. Definitely live block in Indigo Park starting in that time frame. And with Northwest Parcel, the buildings that are in permit right now, buildings 9, 10, 11, 12, hoping to be able to start those mid-fall.
So those are the perimeter little commercial buildings you're numbering, or I don't know what those numbers mean. It's not the Publix, it's all the other
Publix,
commercial.
we're still waiting for all their final design.
Yeah, they are.
They have core and
Fun
shell,
people to work with.
and we're just waiting for interior fit out.
Gotcha. Okay, so the rest, but the rest of the commercial is set to go. You're hoping, if everything works out, you'll be in the ground this summer on the balance of that commercial area.
Correct, mid-fall for that.
Or by fall, let's say. Okay. No, it's an aggressive, there's a lot going to go on, for sure. Okay, we talked about the traffic being, because of what looks like your final intensity is going to be less than what your LUPA said, so your traffic intensity, although it obviously, like anything, when you develop it, it adds traffic, but it's less than what was anticipated with all of the improvements that were set forth and that you guys are paying for to improve in the public realm.
That is correct.
Okay, I think that was all my questions. Anybody else? Yes, Mrs. Smith, go ahead.
The schedules that you just stated, are they on the website somewhere, or could the board get a schedule of the construction and the timeline that we're working on?
We could definitely give you guys a schedule update. We don't have them on the website, but we could make adjustments to the website accordingly.
Because I think the neighborhood is liking to know where it is and what to expect.
So relative to our communications with Cypress Bend, we have regular meetings. I talk with the president of the Cypress Bend Protective regularly, as well as a couple of the other divisions underneath. I think it was like 7 or 8 total. So there's about 3 under the protective that we are in regular communication with as well, specifically those that border right up on the southbound that are looking towards our property. So in that, we keep them updated with anything we have going on. We actually talked about creating a newsletter specifically just for them, so that they could have in their monthly or quarterly meetings that they could let the tenants know what's going on.
Okay, I'd be interested to attend one of the update meetings, so I'll make sure that you get my information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions? Okay. With that, the chair will entertain a motion on item number 3.
I have a motion.
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
I'd like to make a motion that the board finds competent, substantial evidence has been presented for the rezoning with the goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan, and recommend approval of the item.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Questions on the motion? Okay. Bobby, call the roll on item number 3.
Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Darlene Smith,
Because it's light industrial, yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Joan Kovac,
No.
Tundra King,
No.
Carla Coleman,
No.
Fred Stacer.
Yes. Okay, it passes. And now it will just go on to the commission at this point. Ours is a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Does anybody want a break? We got to
Yeah.
keep going. Want a break?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a 10-minute break, folks. Thank you. Everybody ready? All right. All right, we're back on the record. With that, we're chugging along here. We're on item number 4 at this point. 101 South Ocean Boulevard rezoning, PNC 23-13502. Oh, that's interesting. The other one was too, except it was 24. Address 101 South Ocean Boulevard. Mrs. Dolan, you are
Thank you,
up.
Chair, Board. Jean Dolan, Development Services. So this is our presentation on the proposed rezoning of 101 South Ocean Boulevard. The site is shown outlined in yellow. It's a block south of Atlantic Boulevard, fronting on A1A. And I just put the building heights around it. I have 260 feet for Pompano Beach Club, but I was just corrected that it's more like 330 feet, so that's much higher than what I estimated. Right to the west of the site is the Pier Residence project that we've recently approved at 210 feet. To the north is the Atlantic 3350, which is approved at 210 feet. The existing Oceanside Plaza building there to the north is 187 feet, and the building that's the twin to that plaza, which is called Oceanside Parcel A, is approved at 265 feet. So this is the major intersection in our beach CRA where we're trying to promote redevelopment. These are the existing buildings in this vicinity. You can see the Pompano Beach Club, which is right across the street from the subject property. If you look in the foreground there, you see the small building there. That's the Bank of America that's there right now, and that's right now empty. The Oceanside Plaza you're familiar with, it's just to the north. And then Sea Monarch and Ocean Monarch are the existing buildings to the north as you're going toward the pier. So these are renderings of the approved building in this vicinity. So directly to the north of the subject property is Atlantic 3350. And on the other, next to the subject property in the foreground of Atlantic 3350 is Pier Residence. That's the rendering of that building. And then in that vacant parcel that you see behind Atlantic 3350, where our temporary parking lot is right now, that's Oceanside Parcel A, and the approved building for that is shown there in that rendering. So the current land use of this whole quadrant is commercial. And the zoning is a bit of a hodgepodge with the B2 that is being proposed to be changed to B3 fronting on A1A, a bit of an out parcel. What happened in 2006, both the Atlantic 3350 property and the Pier Residence property were rezoned from B2 to B3. So that whole block there used to be all B2, and when they did those two separate actions by separate owners, it kind of ended up cutting that you end up with these B2 out parcels. And fronting A1A is where logically you would have the more intense zoning district. So that B2 is not exactly logical given what's happened in that vicinity. So the change from B2 AOD to B3 AOD really only changes one thing, and that's the lot coverage. So it allows for a horizontally larger building. So the B2 AOD allows up to a 54% lot coverage, and the B3 AOD allows up to a 72% lot coverage. Otherwise, the typical building height is the same at 105 feet, and the hotel use is permitted in either district. So the slender tower provision that allows hotels to go up to 210 feet is something that's allowed in any commercial district under the Atlantic overlay. So the only change that this zoning is resulting in is more lot coverage. So when we look at rezoning review standards, the first thing we do is make sure it's consistent with the land use category. And this the commercial land use does allow for a B3 zone. It has to be supported by the goals, objectives, and policies of the comp plan. And there's plenty of gaps in the goals, objectives, and policies in the comp plan that support this related to the CRA plans for redevelopment in this area, public facilities and services which are available, and encouraging hotel uses. It also has to be consistent with other city-adopted plans. In this case, it's primarily focused on the CRA. Both the CRA and the AOD encourage hotel use. And as you probably all know on the board anyway, staff always recommends denial of land use plan amendments that are trying to change commercial land use on the beach to residential, because we don't want more residential on the beach, primarily due to the hurricane issue. But what we do want in those commercial land uses is hotel uses. You're not going to have office buildings built on the beach. So it's going to be either entertainment uses or hotel uses. So we have a lot of gaps in our comp plan that really try to support hotel, particularly on the Barrier Island. Compatibility with existing and proposed adjacent uses is also one of the standards. And again, this is adjacent to B3 and even higher intensity uses like the Pompano Beach Club on 3 sides. So it is compatible with both the existing and proposed uses in the area. So our alternative motions are: number 1, motion to recommend approval of the proposed rezoning as the board finds it to be compatible with the commercial future land use category and the goals, objectives, and policies in the comp plan. And number 2, motion to table the proposed rezoning to allow further analysis of any issues raised by the board, staff, applicant, or the general public. And staff recommends motion number 1. So I can take any questions you have right now for staff, and then we'll have the applicant come up and do their presentation.
Okay. Any questions for staff at this point? No? Okay. Applicant?
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Andrew Shine with Lockery and Chalkis, 699 North Federal Highway in Fort Lauderdale, here representing the property owner. As Mrs. Dolan said, the property is located 101 South Ocean Boulevard. This is an aerial of the property. She went through the zoning map, but it is zoned B2, and we're proposing to rezone it to B3. Just to back up a little bit, these 2 items are rezoning, and the next one is a site plan. If the chair is okay with it, I'd prefer to do it one presentation.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
This is where full screen doesn't work. This is the proposed building. It was approved by the Architectural Appearance Committee earlier this month.
1 second.
Yes.
We're having trouble with the video on here. If just occasionally, if you just move your mouse, it seems to refresh when the mouse was moved, because it gets all grainy. So if you could just keep wiggling your mouse.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So pat the head and rub the stomach.
Yeah, exactly.
This is backtrack. This was approved earlier this month by Architectural Appearance Committee, unanimous approval. Overall, the building is 15 stories, 220 hotel rooms, 200 parking spaces. We're also proposing about 10,000 square feet of other amenities like meeting rooms, the ground floor grab-and-go market for guests, and a bar at the roof. This is the view looking to the southeast. And this is a view of the building looking to the northwest. Sorry, first one was southwest, this one is northwest. So this is A1A that we're looking at here. Back to full screen. Now we're all small. Technical difficulties. As Jean pointed out, the only reason we're proposing to rezone from B2 to B3 is the lot coverage. And you all see this fine?
Yes.
Perfect. We did originally, and since then have designed what a building like this in B2 could look like. We're still allowed to go to the 210 feet. We would get actually more hotel rooms because we'd add more floors, a lot less parking. This plan on the right would have 256 hotel rooms and 144 parking spaces, which would be allowed. But as we did here, I don't recall who it was, but one of the first speakers on the first project stated that they appreciated that that developer went lower than they were otherwise allowed to. And that's why we're proposing this rezoning. Is instead of doing a skinny and tall building all the way up to 210, and it would probably be like 228 with the rooftop equipment, which doesn't count towards the height. Instead of going that, we're proposing to go shorter and wider, which is where the lot coverage comes in. Hopefully this works. Perfect. So on the top is what our building would look like under B2, bottom is under B3. All that's lost is lot coverage. We would lose about 6,000 square feet on the west side that we just couldn't develop on in exchange for going about 35 feet higher. Instead, what we're proposing is to go about 35 feet, 34 feet lower than the maximum and just spread it out over the rest of the lot. We figured, one, we thought the neighbors would appreciate it, and it sounds like that generally is appreciated. Two, that's an interior lot on the side there, so it's not really going to make a difference massing-wise, spreading the development out further onto the site. But again, it does allow that lower height there. So Gene did a very good job at going through the rezoning standards. I do want to add a lot of points to that. These are the rezoning standards, site-specific zoning standards in the code. There's really only one standard, and it's, is it consistent with the future land use category and the goals, policies, and objectives of the comp plan and other city-adopted plans. We'll start with the future land use category. It's commercial. Hotels are allowed in commercial. It's consistent with the future land use category. The second are any goals, policies, and objectives, and there are a lot of goals, policies, and objectives that support hotel development and promote hotel development on the beach, specifically for tourism. The first policy says to support and promote hotels in the commercial land use designation. Also, the city's coastal management element, I'll just read it off. To discourage residential land use plan amendments, prohibit the use of flex on the barrier island, and encourage hotel development and commercial land use designations. And that's kind of important for this site as a whole. This site is commercial. There is going to be a commercial development on it, whether it's this hotel or another commercial development. There cannot be any more, we can't do the land use plan amendment to change it to residential. So it is a commercial site. The comprehensive plan and the demand suggests a hotel for this site, so that's why we are proposing a hotel. Policy 01.03.12 of the comprehensive plan goes through factors that should be considered in a rezoning. It's not from the zoning code. It's actually, I have not seen this in a comprehensive plan before, so it's a little unique to me. But the comp plan does have things to consider for rezoning. So we'll go through them one by one. There are only 6. Density is the first one. This is going to be a medium-sized hotel, which is generally between 50 and 300 hotel rooms. Here we have about 287 rooms per net acre, 185 per gross acre. There's no density limit for hotels, so I'm not frankly sure that this section is applicable, but I wanted to walk through this. And the adjacent Pompano Beach Club, just for reference, is 593 units, 275 residential, per net acre and 202 per gross. So we're right in line with our neighbor to the east. Third is design. Again, unanimous approval by AAC. The building was designed by FSMY Architects, and I did not do the introduction, sorry, but with me I have Nathan Hoofnagel and Jero Yates with FSMY. Very experienced developers in South Florida. And this hotel will have upscale finishings. We have a public plaza on the southeast, and again, lower than the permitted height. The design overall has been well received both by the public at AAC and the board. Third in the comp plan is the distance to similar development. This hotel is going to be a medium range hotel. It's not going to be a Ritz-Carlton, and it's not going to be a Motel 6. It's going to be in the middle. I don't necessarily call it a budget hotel, but I think the closest is probably the True by Hilton, just to the north, which is about a third of a mile away. And then we do have the Beachcomber about a half a mile away south. Other than that, south of Atlantic, it's a big mix of boutique hotels, which do appeal to some, and dozens of Airbnbs there. So this is not for the market of the people who want to go to boutique hotels. It might be for the people who would otherwise use an Airbnb, but there are some other hotels in the area. The fourth one is existing adjoining uses, the Pompano Beach Club. We're not sure on the exact height of it. The internet has it at 334. It's significantly taller, and we'll show you renderings. But it's compatible with that at what we believe is about half of the height of Pompano Beach Club. And then we have, again, B3 zoning to the north, west, with 210-foot developments already approved. So this at 176 feet is not just compatible with adjoining uses, it's a lot lower than all of the adjoining uses. And it wouldn't be if we were under B2, it would be same height, 210. This is a rendering looking south. You can see Pompano Beach Club right at the forefront there. And then eventually there would be a 210-foot building to the north and to the west. So it's not the biggest building, but it'll fit neatly in that area. Feel like it's compatible with that area. Particularly as to the south, we do have, sorry, is it better?
We can't get it yet.
No, it hadn't.
About now.
But that's okay. She does?
1 out of 7's got it.
Oh, wait, here it comes. I got
Okay,
it. I got
came
it.
in.
Wow.
So this is the rendering looking south. So yes, it's a lot shorter than our neighbors and our future neighbors, but we do have RM30 to the south. It is also in the AOD. They can go up to 105. So even though our neighbors will all be a lot taller than us, the north-south transition from 105, 176, and then 210, it makes sense. This is another rendering looking towards the beach. Same concept as before. It's significantly smaller in scale than adjoining development. The second to last one is the proposed adjoining uses. The property on the west is approved for 210 feet. I think that was approved a couple of years ago. I don't know if when that's going to get constructed, but proposed adjoining uses would also be consistent with what we're proposing. And lastly, in the comp plan under the rezoning criteria there is readiness for redevelopment of surrounding uses. At the AAC meeting, we did have a couple of people from Pompano Beach Club South who spoke generally favorably for the design and the project itself. They were appreciative that we didn't go up to the maximum height. But they did also have some, I don't want to say concerns, but at least questions related to things like utilities, fire and EMS response, and traffic. So I don't see them here tonight. Oh, there they are, okay. We do have the answers today for that. These are the fire and EMS response times in 2022. You can see all the way on the right, the call to arrival was about 8 minutes. This is standard. This was within the general range for what the National Fire Protection Association wants to see. Generally 8 minutes for low, medium hazard, and 10 minutes, 10 seconds for high hazard. And Pompano was pretty well within that range, kind of on the higher end of response times, but they were within it. But since then, 2 more fire stations have come online to serve the beach. And this was just, the city sent this to me about 2 weeks ago. These are as of the current response times. Fire is responding within 6 minutes, hazard within 5 minutes. In some zones, in the zone 1102, they're even a little bit quicker. So right now, Pompano is far exceeding and it's not even a requirement, it's more like a benchmark from the NFPA. Pompano, now that those 2 are online, far exceeding what the benchmark is. So we don't have the fire department didn't have any issue. We don't think there's going to be any issue with fire and EMS response times. If this was before those 2 came online, maybe, but not now. Second was a question on utilities and infrastructure. That was a question from the public at AAC. When the city does their DRC review, they don't allow it to go to Planning and Zoning Board unless they confirm that there is adequate capacity, both in the pipes and the treatment plants. So they already did that confirmation, and it is in the backup that there's adequate capacity, but we are still making improvements. Number 1, not really an improvement. It's required by Broward County, but we'll be retaining all stormwater on site. We did hear possible concerns with flooding in the area, not necessarily on A1A, but all new developments they required to retain all stormwater on site. So I'm not giving that as something we're doing extra. It's required, but I just want everybody to know that there's no way around that. The second is we are adding about 215 linear feet of a new 8-inch water main on the north side of the property. The property, this property and the one to the north are currently served by a 2-inch water main. The one on the north will still be serviced by it, but we're running an 8-inch water main from A1A to a little bit just west of our development. That'll hopefully be able to get the city off of the 2-inch water main in the future, and it'll allow the property to the west, when they get developed, to continue that 8-inch so that they don't have to go all the way to A1A. So we are doing improvements on our own that also help the project and really the surrounding area. Oh, sorry, there is one more. Proximity to mass transit. It's in walking distance to 2 bus stops, both north and south of the property. However, most transit to hotels these days really comes in the form of ride sharing. That's why you'll see a lot of cities lowering their parking requirements for hotels, because it's a lot of ride share these days. People don't want to go to the airport, rent a car, and go to the hotel. We did do a trip generation for this, comparing it to the existing bank. The city mostly looks at AM and PM peak hours. That's, of course, rush hour, when most cars are on the road. Hotels are one of the best. If you don't like traffic, hotels are one of the best uses, because the numbers say what the numbers say, but if you just think about it, check-in is after rush hour and check-out's before rush hour. So most of the trips for a hotel are not when most of the people are on the road. So if you don't like traffic, it is one of the better uses. And even just comparing it to, it was frankly a relatively small bank, the PM peak hour trips, so nighttime rush hour, this actually produces less trips than a bank would. AM peak hour, very minor marginal increase between 3 and 8, depending on the time of the day and the in versus out. But traffic-wise, a hotel is one of the better ones. There is if you can see, I don't want to glance past this or hide anything. It does say that there's a 1,000 trip increase net overall, just daily. So even though AM, PM peak hours are lower or the same, overall there will be more trips compared to a bank, and that's what you see generally in the middle of the day. That 1,000 number seems very scary, but it's comparable to a Starbucks. It's actually a little less than a 2,000 square foot Starbucks would produce in a day. So it's not a very large number. And again, the AM, PM is what generally most people care about and what the city cares about in the code as well. The last rezoning criteria is consistency with any city-adopted plans. And sorry, this is very small, but I'll read it. This is a section from the purpose section of the AOD, and it is also intended to help implement the Pompano East CRA redevelopment plan. Now, the East CRA development plan is kind of old. I believe it was originally adopted in 2001 and then amended in 2010. But it does still exist, and it still does support this, encourage this development. So there are just a few excerpts here. Encourage development, hotel development east of the intercoastal, promote tourism by supporting development, assist hotel developers with incentives to construct hotel units, and then a general background on promoting beachfront business and beachfront tourism. And although this is old, fairly old, I will say it was probably very successful. This area has been built up. 20 years ago, when I was a teen, my parents wouldn't let me go to Fort Lauderdale because it was unsafe and dirty. That changed 10 years after. 10 years ago today, when I had agency of my own, I didn't want to come to Pompano because it was unsafe and not what it is today. And I do think that developments like this, bringing tourism to the side of the intercoastal, not only promoted heavily by the comp plan code, redevelopment plans, but it also made that area an attractive place for tourists, which only helps local businesses as well. I think that is the last slide, so definitely here if you have any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Coleman, go ahead.
Well, not so much a question, just.
Ms. Coleman, your mic, can you turn it on?
I'm so sorry. Usually on. just a procedural question. Before we have to deal with either of these applications, can we hear from the public and then take them one at a time?
Oh, we're going to have to. We don't have a choice legally. We have to deal with.
I know, but I mean, I want to hold any questions I have till after I hear from the public, but I don't want to vote on one without kind of hearing the presentation on everything.
Okay. Well, I think he kind of gave us the general presentation, but I think we'll go ahead and hear from the public on this one, and then we're going to start over. If he wants to just adopt his existing thing, unless he has something else to say, I think he's probably just going to, although staff is going to have a separate presentation because one is a rezoning and one's a major site plan. So I'm not sure what your question is now.
I just want to hear from the public before I generate any questions to anyone.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask before? Yes, Mrs. Smith.
I have a question about the parking. And I'm not sure if I was understanding it correctly. Are you actually like layering the cars in the garage?
There'll be lifts, yes.
Oh, cool.
If you, Drew, do you want to come up and speak about that?
You see that a lot in Europe, and you don't see that much here, so I was
It's
like,
becoming
wow,
a lot more
they're actually
popular.
layering.
Jerome Yates, FSMY Architects and Planners, 888 South Andrews Avenue in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So yeah, the utilization of the lifts obviously is a more efficient use of the space because you can put more cars in a smaller footprint. We've been doing it quite a bit. I don't know if you know the Pelican Grand Beach Resort down in Fort Lauderdale, which we did. That's been, if you go there, you can actually physically see it. We actually have the exact same situation. It's actually underground on the beach, and it's actually stacked cars in front of stacked cars, and it's been operating for about 20 years now.
Nice. It was good to see that in your development.
The only downside is it's valet only, but that's safety reasons.
It could
Wasn't?
It could be quite interesting if you let everybody run in there and get theirs down off the third level.
Some condos do have them without valet. They're tied to specific units, but sounds like a safety issue.
Exciting. Okay. Anybody else before we go to the public?
So one of the concerns we have when we rezone something like this, especially if we're moving from B2 to B3, is any sort of future assurances we have that you're going to keep.
Mr. Lewis, just closer to the microphone, please.
That's a good one. I can put that in front of me. I'm normally too loud, guys. I'm trying to tone it down. One of the concerns we have when we rezone something, I think you caught most of that, from B2 to B3, is the assurances that you're actually going to use this project for what we're talking about. Have we had any assurances of that? I mean, are we talking? I'm not asking you to make any requirements, but like, have there been any sort of deed restrictions that we've talked about getting into?
I will happily proffer a declaration of restrictive covenants if that's requested.
105 feet is the maximum height if it's not a hotel, so they would have to come in and redo their site plan if it was another use. It would still have to be a commercial use. And if you think about what would go on a beach with this high, expensive property, it's not likely to be an office building or anything like that.
We would still happily proffer a declaration if wanted.
Okay. Yeah, he looks happy. He just wants to go see the Panthers game. I know. Okay, anybody else? Okay, public. Folks from the public want to speak?
I've got a few. Audrey Fezzik again, 412 Briney Avenue. I have a few things. First, I wanted to, again, because I know it's confusing that there's two things with the same project, essentially. I did send out an email, earlier today that did have, as I'm representing a bunch of local citizens, I just printed off, because I didn't feel like it was necessary to print off 500 plus signatures, but I just printed off, literally I just clicked through the most recent ones and printed off a small sample with some had comments as well regarding the change in zoning and the proposed use with the hotel. This is not my concern necessarily, but this is just additional ones I saw somewhere included with the planning and zoning information.
Okay.
I want to be
That's fine.
The rest are, I actually did provide a link to the city, so that is a live link. So if anybody else does have any concerns, you can have the link and you can view it in real time. So anyway, so first, I just want
before you
to say, sorry.
One of the questions that came up is that you said you provided this information to the city.
Via email, yes.
Do you know to whom specific? Okay. I see that it was provided to Ms. Lauren.
Pretty much everybody, I think.
Just because he is the board secretary.
Yes.
So any kind of documentation he needs to make sure
Yes.
it's received.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to say in begin, and I'm sorry about the timing. I know that as a citizen, you have a limited amount of time. But one, I'm really excited about a lot of the improvements in Pompano. So I want to start with saying that as a community member, I am from Pompano. I came back from Pompano after my kids are raised and they're done. I am retiring back in Pompano, if you will, a little early for retirement so much, but still plan to make this my forever home moving forward. As such, I am very much invested in the community. I'm very excited to be part of the community and would like to continue to do so. I definitely see a need for hotels in the area as opposed to mixed use, quote unquote, properties on the barrier island. But I think one of the things that is the biggest concern for a lot of the citizens, and these are my neighbors, these are people, I live here full time for the most part. We have a place in Nashville, but I live here full time. One of the biggest concerns from the neighbors as we're walking up and down the street, as I'm going to local restaurants and engaging with people who live in the condos, both seasonally and not seasonally, is that the concern of a little bit of the overdevelopment in height and in density is a concern to people. It's not necessarily that they're against development. So the concern is with changing the zoning requirements or restrictions, then you change the marketable aspect of this property. You change the density of this property. So this, like he said, there was like 56%, I believe, to 70-something%. When you change the density, he says maximum height, sure, you can do maximum of anything, but it still has to go through the committee for approval. I believe that we do need hotels here. I'm not against that. I think that we need to be a little cognizant of the difference in the shape and height being what's proposed and approved already, and then providing a little bit of a buffer zone from concrete wasteland to concrete wasteland. In addition, the City of Pompano Beach Comprehensive Plan, and I'll just kind of, I may save this for the next round if you'd like. There are some issues that we do have, and I want to be cognizant of real-world applications rather than beautiful slideshows and pictures, because those slideshows they mostly looked north, and they focused on the higher-rise buildings, and they focused on the proposed developments that are already approved, but they didn't necessarily take into account that neighborhood that's entirely south there as well. And so there's not necessarily that buffer zone, as the city usually requests, to have a little bit of a height requirement or height restriction moving forward. I think the 105, the AOD gives a lot of leeway for developers. A lot of things that were put in place years ago to attract developers to this area have been great. But unfortunately, I think if we're trying to pile 3 really tall buildings and then you add in the Pompano Beach Club towers, which are existing, to that area, then you're going to see, plus north and south, that's going to become a lot of concrete and a lot of less sunshine and a lot of less attractive areas. So I would love to see a hotel there, just want to say that, but I would like to see it at a smaller level if possible. That's all.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pam Sawarka, 101 Briney.
Ma'am, just lower the microphone.
Taller than I am. I agree with everything that Audrey said, but in addition to that, the traffic right now on the intersection of Atlantic and A1A is really bad on any given day at any given time, especially when the bridge goes up. A lot of cars back up into what we call the box, I think is what it is. And so even people going north and south on A1A aren't able to because people that are in the turn lane because they're waiting for the bridge and stuff. And I just think that this hotel will just make it even worse than it already is. The other concern I have is when they were talking about the parking garage. I've been looking at different hotels, different condos and stuff that have that type of stacking, and there's a lot of problems with it still. And if it does stop working, then that's going to back up onto A1A2, people trying to get in if the mechanism doesn't work. And one of the things that cause the mechanisms not to work is the power, the electricity. And right now, we all know, especially if it's raining or something, there's a good chance the power will go out for a little bit. So that's a concern. And by widening this from a B2 to a B3, I'm just wondering, if you use all the land up with the building, then what does that do to the flooding? Right now, some of the water can be absorbed in the land around there, but if you make it go all the way up to the curbs on all sides, then I think that will make the flooding worse also. And I think that's about all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay.
Hello again, Ann Bosworth, 4015 West Palm Air Drive, number 408, Pompano Beach. Just a quick comment and a reinforcement of the idea that we love good development here. It's really nice when we see things happening that are improvements to the city. So well done for some of that. But I do want to make the comment that we're getting a little bit out of control, especially on the beach. And I have to wonder, when do we consider the neighbors, people like the folks who are living on Briney and what they need? When is this city going to go back to being for them? Because the more hotels and things that you have here, which I understand that there is a legal reason that, you know, people are allowed to build what's zoned there and whatnot. But there's also the issue that the more you keep putting these things there and approving them, right, the less that is for me. When I try to come there, I was just there last night. And on the weekends, it's almost impossible. So if you live there, especially if you live on Briney, none of that is really for you. It's for people who come here and don't really care about the land, don't really care about our town. They're not really invested here. And that, to me, as a resident of Pompano Beach, is problematic. I also wonder, when I saw that buffer zone, and I thought about what the first gentleman in item number 1 had done to put all this vegetation there and this the rain element. Where is that in any of this? This seems like it's all meant to maximize profit and not really to do much of benefit for the environment. So I don't see extra vegetation. I don't see any extra land being used to add vegetation in the beachfront. All of those things that we know scientifically are important for protecting the beach, because what protects on the barrier island protects the inland. So we all should really be concerned about that, and I'm wondering when we're going to hear more about how this particular development and others that are following it are going to improve my life as a citizen here and also improve the natural environment. Why would anyone want to come and visit here if the whole area is destroyed and full of concrete?
Anybody else? Come on.
Hi, my name is Catherine Aiello, 111 Briney Avenue, apartment 1411, Pompano Beach Club South. Unfortunately, I'm one of the ones that will be looking directly right into probably the mechanical level of the building, but I'm not here to complain about my view because my view is not the issue. I'd like to know if you have any renditions that you've been showing us of when it's totally developed with the pure residence, if it ever comes to fruition, the Atlantic and that building there. What is it called? Is it the Atlantic, the one that's a 21-story and 19-story? Do you have any sort of drawings of that? So we could see what it's going to look like when all these towers are built. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, he'll get up and answer. He'll answer all the various questions, I believe. He will. Okay. Anybody else?
Barbara Barkley, 101 Briney. We are just trapped on that corner. They're going to develop north of us, they're going to develop west of us, and on the weekends, we can't move. You don't want to leave because you have to come back. I mean, the traffic, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and I'm happy to see everybody using the beach. But living there, it's just impossible to get around. I mean, we go out of our way to go other places, and then you have traffic there. And it's just being, like, we just feel like it's being overdeveloped. And they keep putting up the buildings, and there's not enough public parking. So the cars go, waiting for a spot. It just creates all kinds of problems with traffic. I just want that to be considered in the overall plan, not just about the hotel. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay. We'll close the public hearing at this point. No, I think she's getting up to let the other lady sit down, I believe. She had spoke, yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Shine, would you care to get up and address some of these issues, or whatever it is you would like to?
Yes, I'll keep it brief. Just to clear up one misnomer, this rezoning from B2 to B3 does not increase the allowable height or the allowable density. Height is 210, and density, there is no density limit for hotels. To make the numbers work, again, we did design something in B2, and it's taller and more dense than what we're proposing now. So kind of the opposite of that. I hear the concerns about if there's a storm and the lifts don't work. We do have a generator proposed. The generator can service the building for up to a week. The lifts themselves, we don't have the model picked out yet, but they may also have battery backups. But if not, the generator can handle that. I do understand the public parking problem. As not a resident of Pompano, but as a frequent visitor of Pompano, I understand the parking problem. And a lot of that, I hate to say it, the AOD doesn't require any parking for parcels of 1 acre or less. So this hotel could be built with 0 parking under the code. And if it is built with 0 parking, and some restaurants are built with 0 parking, yes, that definitely leads to public parking problems, which is why we included 200 parking spaces in this, which is overkill for this development. I'll say, regardless of the AOD, in the normal zoning code only requires 0.7 parking spaces per hotel room if you have over 150. And we are well exceeding what's proposed in the normal zoning code. AOD were required 0. So I get the parking problem, and it's developments that don't include all of their parking inside their building. We do not have renderings of all of the other buildings. We would need all of the drawings and the CAD files to include the other buildings in our renderings. But I can tell you, at least looking from this view, if those other buildings that are approved are built, you wouldn't see our building in this rendering at all because it's lower than the one to the north. So I don't have that rendering, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't be able to see the building at all from this angle. That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Mrs. King, go ahead.
Yes, one of the young ladies spoke about the bridge and the traffic and being perhaps stuck on the other side of the bridge. In your study, did you come across that there would be any issues with your project and the current traffic of, all the other buildings that are already located there?
We have not run into any issues regarding that. We did not do a full-blown traffic study. It wasn't required for this level of development. Because we're decreasing PM peak hour trips. So generally, you're not required to do a traffic study when you're decreasing those PM peak hour trips. Again, that goes back to the hotels are a very unique, and if you don't like traffic, hotels are the best development because it's off-peak hours for hotels. But we have not seen or run into any issues with that. And it's probably unlikely that the Atlantic and A1A intersection would be used to access his property. It would likely be either south A1A and then left on First, or Atlantic to Hibiscus on the west side where the parking garage entrance is. So it's unlikely that that intersection will be heavily used for this project. Going out to the north, it's possible, or south on A1A, but going into the development, it's not that right turn over there.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Coleman, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that we're still kind of on the zoning request here, but if we're going to, the site plan and the zoning are so connected, I'd really like to see a full presentation on the site plan, landscaping, amenities on the grounds, how much green space there's going to be there, because the renderings you've shown us so far really don't show us much of anything along those lines. And I just didn't know if you were planning on doing a presentation along those lines.
The only additional thing I would add, unless there are specific questions, which I'm happy to answer, is the landscape plan. This is the landscape plan here. Right now, there are about 39 trees on site. Most of them, the vast majority, are palm trees. We are putting 48 trees on site, 45 of which will be shade trees, along with hundreds and hundreds of bushes and other items along the street and interior to the site on the west. Street trees all up and down A1A, street trees on the north, street trees on the south.
Do you have any renderings of what that would look like?
We do not have a landscape-specific rendering, no. It would, are you looking for like this but in color?
Not just color, just to see what heights of trees that you're putting on the building, what the grounds would look like. It's really hard, if you're not a landscape architect, to tell what something is going to look like from looking at this.
I understand. We do not have renderings of it. In the renderings, we try to focus on the architecture of it. So the trees would hide that. So I'm sorry.
I understand that, but it's not just the architecture of the building. It's how it's going to fit on the site and how movement is going to be around it, whether you have built to the exact limits of the lot, which I know you haven't because you've got only 70-some-odd% coverage. So, help us understand how this is going to connect with the building next door and how people are going to move around this site.
Okay. People are going to move around the site. There are 2 entrances and 2 exits, both on the north and south. They're both ingress and egress. Entrance is through here. You can exit onto the south here. This is where the valet operations will occur. And into here is the parking garage entrance for valet. So valet will go here. Let's show it on the site plan. Valet will go here. We're only showing 8 stacking spaces for valet. That's because that was the city's requirement. You can fit probably double the amount of stacking, so we're not really worried about cars queuing on the street here. But entrance is southeast first and southeast second. Left, right, whatever movement you want to make there.
Is there going to be a wall between you and the property in back of you?
There is, yes. There's a wall here, which will be heavily landscaped on the interior of here. The building itself, and I'll show a rendering that you can see it, but the building itself ends along this line, and to the west will be open to the air. This is just the service garbage truck entrance. It's a front-loading garbage truck. They can move in here and then move out to here. So this area will be open, not under cover. There's a little canopy, but no building over here. So there will be that. It's about 15-foot buffer or so between these two buildings. And again, landscaping and trees, the interior lot line. When the building to the west is built, hopefully those trees are okay. It is an interior lot line, and that's a very tall building that's going to go to the west. But we do have landscaping there. On the southeast, we have a public plaza. This is not the main entrance to the building. The main entrance is here, which will function as a secondary plaza. There's about a 400 square foot area there, but that's going to be the entrance. Down here, it's a public plaza, bench seating. There's a public art opportunity, and if we do move forward with this, we do plan on working with either neighbors and or the public art committee on what should go there. I know there are a lot of different opinions on what public art should look like on the beach. Sidewalks, new sidewalks all around, 7.5 feet for the most part. Landscaping in between the sidewalk and the building. We can't do landscaping, unfortunately, between the sidewalk and the street because it's FDOT and they won't let us. So instead we do have, and I'll bring up that landscape plan again, we do have trees, shade trees, bushes, low-lying stuff, all on A1A here. Very, very heavily landscaped on the southeast corner where the public plaza is. Not as heavily landscaped on the north. That's mainly due to utilities, but shade trees still along first there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I just have a couple of comments that I did want to try to answer on the parking. We do realize that we're going to be in a situation at the time that the development along the beach on the corner of the Atlantic and between Pompano Beach Boulevard and A1A, when we lose that additional parking, and the city is very aggressively trying to replace that parking before the development. It will be, my guess is it'd be well over a year before we'll see that, maybe a year and a half. But we were very cognizant of how much parking and, for lack of a better, how much success we have in terms of how this redevelopment of the beach area has drawn a lot of folks from outside. We understand that. We're also in the process of trying to build another parking garage between our fire station library area where that existing ground parking is. We're working on that as well. It is difficult for the city, and we are trying very hard to deal with that particular problem that is created by the success of that area. So I don't want you to think, I mean, you're going to think whatever you think, but we're trying really hard to find opportunities and work out situations with different people and trying to increase that parking on a daily basis. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I didn't want to think that we're not aware of it. So,
Mr. Chairman, one
yes.
other point. I think someone mentioned about flooding. Would you like to comment on your plans to keep your project from flooding?
Sure, yeah. We're required to retain all of our stormwater on site, so it's not going into public right-of-way. That's not, I don't know when the Bank of America was built, but it's probably not the case for the existing building. We're also adding, significant, it's a surface parking lot right now with very little landscaping. So we are adding pervious area to it as well. As for the overall, how we're doing that, it's through the use of vegetation, which is the swales, and we also have exfiltration trenches and drainage wells in the garage. So all stormwater, as required, will be retained on site.
I want to make sure I heard what you said. Did you say drainage wells?
Me.
Are you talking about injection wells, or are you talking about drain fields?
It's on my...
Or both?
I could very well have just misspoken. We are doing exfiltration trenches.
Okay.
It is drain... We have drainage wells on the plan. Drainage
Okay,
wells.
so you have wells that are going to take the excess water down and into the water table then?
That is my understanding.
Okay. Well, the property to the west of it that is developed was, I say recently, in the last 6 or 7 years. Eventually, they may actually finish. But there's several injection wells, because I remember, I think it was at least 5 or 6 they had in the wells, drainage wells. So it doesn't surprise me at all. This is a much smaller site, but yes, it seems like you would have to meet meet South Florida water management requirements and stuff for your on-site. Any other comments? And this is, of course, at this point, it's just about and I understand your concern about understanding the entire project, but at this point, we're just talking about the technical part of the zoning, of the rezoning. So, any other comments? And if not, the chair will entertain a motion on item number 4.
Mr. Chair, before we make the motion, let me just make sure I'm understanding this correct.
Mhm.
If we don't do the rezoning, they build a taller building that doesn't take up quite as much base.
That would be, yes.
But if we give them rezoning, it's a shorter building, takes up a little bit more base, but it's a shorter building.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just want to make sure I understand.
And they also have to, well, because when you pass through that one level, when you pass through the 105, I believe at that point you have to have the slender effect of the
Right.
building and
Right.
whatever. So they wouldn't have gotten this far without meeting the slenderization, for lack, I don't even know what the word is, but if that's a word, slenderization problem.
Right, but it is shorter because of the rezoning.
Yes, because they can build the base wider is basically what it is, and they can, but go ahead, you comment on it.
That is correct, but, and I'll reiterate Mr. Lewis's question, just in case it is involved in a motion. If it is rezoned to B3, then we can go wider and taller. If it's rezoned to B3 with a declaration of restrictive covenants on the height that we're proffering, then it cannot.
Great, thank you.
And they physically, I think the last question that she was asking too is that you physically couldn't do that in B2 because of the coverage. You would have to build taller to even be able to get the same amount of units on it.
That is correct. To hit the numbers there, it would actually be about 30 more units, less parking, and at essentially the maximum height. Under the slenderness provisions, we actually can't go to the maximum height, but we can get really close at like 208 feet, 8 inches. But yes, under those slenderness provisions, we can't reach 210, but we can get inches away. That's under the existing B2.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, the board will entertain a motion, the chair will entertain a motion on item number 4. Anybody?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Mrs. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion that the board finds that competent substantial evidence has been presented for the rezoning and the goals and objectives and policies with a comprehensive plan, and recommend approval of the Claridge Home 101 Hotel item. There's no conditions on here.
No
You
conditions
added
on
a
the
condition.
rezoning, no.
I guess what I added wasn't really a condition so much as something that they were going
Okay.
to agree to outside of.
Yeah.
So no
proffer.
conditions?
With the
With the
proffered deed restriction.
With the proper deed restriction.
Restrictive, declaration of restrictive covenants if possible.
Right.
Deed restriction is a nightmare.
I'm sorry.
Different, yeah.
It's late.
I said that wrong the first time.
Okay.
Okay?
So we're good? Okay. I didn't want to have to repeat that.
No, because then we make Mr. Saunders say it. Yeah.
No, the applicant's representative has proffered it, so.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, Bobby, call the roll on item number 4.
Darlene Smith,
Yes.
Andre King,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Joan Kovac,
Yes.
Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Carla Coleman,
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes. Okay. And with that, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the site plan for the same project. Item number 5 is Pompano Hotel, PNC 23-124042, and it's same address, 101 South Ocean Boulevard. And I knew Lauren didn't just show up here to come visit, so Mrs. Gretzer, it's your ball at this point.
Good evening, board members and chair. Lauren Gratzer, Development Services. I will say, I believe Andrew and Jean did a very good job of giving you guys an overview, so I can very quickly just skip all of that stuff. This presentation is for the site plan of the Pompano Hotel. We all know where it's located. The site plan they're proposing is going to be for 220 units. It will have all the standard amenities that a hotel has, meeting rooms, fitness center, and bar, restaurant. The height will be 171 feet, while we discussed the maximum can be 210. We did review it at the DRC 3 times, and it was approved at the AAC earlier this month. You guys just looked at the zoning, so you're aware. So the department recommendations, I have 7 of them. Number 1, the applicant's corresponding rezoning application from B2 to B3 shall be approved prior to building permit approval through the city commission. Number 2, the applicant shall provide a valet agreement in accordance with the code for the proposed valet parking. Number 3, the applicant shall provide evidence of compliance with the sea turtle lighting requirements of the code for the portions of the building that can be seen from the beach. Number 4, the applicant shall submit to staff a 5-foot right-of-way dedication on both Southeast 1st and Southeast 2nd Street. Number 5, update the ground floor photometric plan and irrigation plan with the revised dumpster location per the site plan. Number 6 are the standard conditions of approval. The applicant shall provide evidence of compliance with the sustainability narrative. The plans are subject to compliance with all applicable code requirements, including the comments from the DRC. Landscape and irrigation plans must comply with all zoning code requirements as verified by the city's Urban Forestry Division, and a copy of the subted plan approved by the BSO shall be submitted for the building permit approval. And then I added a new condition, number 7. This was not on the staff report, but it was deemed in that in-between time that the applicant shall obtain approval of an air park obstruction permit prior to the building permit approval. Those are my conditions.
Okay. All right, so we have 7. Okay, anybody have any questions of staff at this point? Nope. Mr. Shine, do you want to add anything from the site plan side? Oh, first of all, are you okay with the now 7 conditions of staff?
Yes, we're okay with those conditions.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I don't want to add much, but Mrs. Coleman did ask about floor plans and meeting rooms, so I do want to show that. We saw the ground floor plan already. This is the 2nd level floor plan. The On A1A, it's going to be all active uses facing A1A. Furthers the septet principles. It also looks a lot nicer. So this, on the page right, is east. There will be a fitness center, business center, computers, things like that. Most of the second floor is just parking. Third floor, parking as well, meeting rooms this time, just to keep that active use on A1A. Fourth floor, it's just parking. That on the right side is going to be the roof of that podium there, since we step back a bit. So fourth floor is just parking. And then all of the hotel plans, for the sake of efficiency, are the exact same, all the floor plans. The rooms range from 300 to 500 square feet. So again, it's not the Ritz-Carlton, but it's not a Motel 6 either. So somewhere in the middle.
Rooftop pool?
Working my way there.
Okay.
This is the rooftop deck, bathrooms. There will be a rooftop bar and a rooftop pool there as well. And those are the floor plans. I'd be happy to show any other plan that's requested, though. I don't have anything else specific to the site plan, but we do meet there are review standards for the site plan. We wouldn't be here if we didn't meet those already, so staff did make that determination, but it meets the AOD requirements, design requirements, et cetera.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant? Okay, does anybody want to speak on this at this point? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Again, Audrey Fezzik, 412 Briney. Okay, I apologize, I know it's late. First of all, I would like to request a copy of all of the slide presentations that were shown today as given to, from the city officials and from you as well, if we could. And I'll be happy to provide you my email address privately. Additionally, the main issue I have with this building and the idea that it's here is, like you said, parking is an issue. I misspoke when I said earlier that, with the size requirements, with this change from B2 to B3, the zoning change there. If there's any way we can try to find some sort of happy medium with not just the slenderness provision in the image that was shown, and Mr. Schein, I've been at a few of your presentations before, and a lot of times what you do is you sort of offer this, what is perceived to be a threat to citizens, by saying, if you don't give us this, then we are allowed to build this. But however, it doesn't sit well with the people that you're trying to, sort of embolden, and you would like them on your side, I'm assuming. So with that image you showed earlier, that was not necessarily what would have been allowed, right? Because as you just admitted, the slenderness provision that is allowed with the B2 zoning as opposed to the B3 zoning would be narrower. You would not be able to have lot density, and you would have to go taller, but you would not be able to have as many rooms, correct?
No, we met the slenderness provisions under B2 at 208 feet, and we couldn't fit more rooms because we have three or four additional
Okay,
floors.
so I just want to make sure I was clear, because the drawing that you had was very deceptive in that. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I was asked questions, and I want to make it be clear. If there's any way the city of Pompano Beach could if you're be granted this and you have agreed to the provisions that with B3 that you will maintain that lower height, question, would you or the developer be interested or willing to possibly increase the amount of parking that would in turn possibly be leased back to the city of Pompano in light of the fact that we do have so many problems, or perhaps we give you another floor if in case that's a situation where we do have additional parking. So again, that parking is then relieved for the city as well. Just asking questions.
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I don't know if we can provide, sorry, I just don't know if we can provide public parking. Right now it's all valet and they're stackers, so logistically I don't know how that would work. It could be something we could explore, but I can't give an answer based on what we have right now.
Okay, and I just wanted to put...
It would be a big change to the plan.
And just a few comprehensive plan notes, 01.01.05, 01.01.09, 01.03.05, 01.03.07, and 01.09.01. Since I'm running out of time, I just wanted them to be on record that I feel like this hotel project does not necessarily meet those standards with the city comprehensive plan. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Coraline Gibbs. I live at 101 Briney Avenue, and there's a word that I haven't heard from anybody, and that's pedestrians. And I would like to say, as my girlfriends have mentioned, the parking is awful, the driving is impossible, we just stay home. However, by staying home, we walk, and there's an awful lot of people. So, on my mind, bringing this hotel and other hotels is going to give us more people crossing A1A, especially at 2nd Street, because any of you that ever tried to walk as we do in the position of our two towers, if we want to cross the street, we either are in danger of trying to get to Walgreens, for example, or we walk to the corner. And at the corner, it's dangerous. We've had meetings for years about what the traffic light is like and the timing of the crosswalk, trying to, with all of the regular residents as well as the happy beachgoer tourists who are trying in waves to get across the street within the time limit of that beeping allotment of time. It's impossible. So coming out to try to avoid that box that we discussed at A1A and Atlantic Boulevard, if we make a left and go down Briney, go down 2nd Street, there's no way to stop the traffic that's coming fast because they want to get over the bridge or they want to get through the light before the light changes. So that's a really bad corner just where you're introducing this hotel with so many more people. It's not just this hotel, it will be the Pure residences too. I'd like to suggest that you consider the pedestrians and think about whether it's the traffic commission or the state that grants more traffic lights, or whether there's a possibility of a plan for pedestrian overpasses. I don't know what your height requirement is. I don't know who would pay for that, but we really have a need to get the people across the street. Everyone coming to these hotels is going to want to go to the beach. And after one trip down to the corner where the traffic light, the only traffic light is, they're all going to try to cross at 2nd Street. It's a mess now. It's going to be worse. I do appreciate a wider, shorter hotel, and I think everybody I know does too. Nonetheless, we need some help, and if this is not the right board, maybe you can pass the information on. Thank you.
I wrote it down. I will probably maybe I'll have a discussion with the city engineer and see if there's something that we can think about on that front. So I made a note of that. Okay. Was there anybody else in the audience want to speak on this? Okay. At this time, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And
Chair, may I?
Yes.
Very briefly, I just wanted the woman who spoke about the sidewalks, I just want to add the pedestrian access there is terrible. There are no sidewalks at all on the north or south of this property. Today, correct. So yes, it's not safe. But this does include sidewalks and tree buffers between them and the street, so.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, Mrs. Coleman, go ahead.
One more question. I take it that you did meet with the community? Have you held meetings with the community? Can you talk about how many meetings and when you held those?
Yes, we tried. I only have one printout of the email trail, but I emailed there's a savebriney.org I did email the info@savebriney.org and traded some emails back and forth. First outreach was on March 5th, and it was regarding both projects that I'm processing right now. One is 580 Briney and one is this one. I emailed again on March 21st asking for a meeting. I did get some responses related to 580 Briney, not regarding this project. Followed up again on April 8th asking for a meeting. Followed up on April 23rd asking for a meeting. I followed up on May 14th asking for a meeting. May 14th, I got a substantive response, which was only a week ago after we already went to AAC. And it was essentially a response saying, tell us what you're going to do for us, and then we'll meet, which I've never encountered before. But I can say that we did try. I had a good conversation with some of the ladies over there after the AAC meeting, and I made sure to address their comments in this presentation today. And overall, I think the sentiment was fairly positive, but all I can say is we tried 5 times over the last 3 months.
Did you have a question or a quick comment? Okay.
So apparently this is getting comfortable for me. Audrey Fezzik, 412 Briney. So I just want to address that public comment situation. Originally, Save Briney and Save Pompano started off as a neighborhood, just collective of people who had questions, and because we do live in a very transient community, there were not a lot of people who were able to be at meetings or have questions answered, and a lot of people along our street, especially because of the proposed project at 580 and at this one, and surrounding projects that are being presented to the city, but initially that started as just a neighborhood collaborative of neighbors wanting to talk to one another. The original participants, I was kind of involved just because I live on the street and I've talked to everybody. In the transition period, so I decided and was asked to take over the project somewhat and to make it official, because we were talking about how citizens would like to be heard a little bit more effectively and not be just heard as naysayers to projects, because that's not necessarily the truth. We actually are really excited about a lot of different projects. So if there was any delay in perhaps getting back to you on certain things, it was because I did not have access into these email addresses at that point in time. I do now. The response from the general public, as was provided in the link that was sent earlier with the form site, there's over 500 signatures and petitions against this project in general for Pompano Hotel. And there's the question, as I saw in the email thread, was more related to the 580 project and not necessarily to the Pompano Hotel. So to answer your question specifically, as it was seen in the email thread, he did say in the email thread that he did represent both projects, but the questions were related to the 580 project and not this one. Thank you.
The reason that I ask that is it's very important to us, this board, to know that developers who are doing business in our city have reached out to the communities and held meetings. Often we tell them, usually a little earlier in the process, but tell them if they haven't that they need to do that. This is very complicated because there's 2 projects. And 580 is one thing, this little hotel is another. And the hotel's gonna, this is zoned for a hotel, it's encouraged for a hotel. I think that what I've heard tonight here is a lot of effort to try to build shorter, and as he says, if those other projects that are already approved get built, they're there. But you're talking about sidewalks and landscaping, and we do have a new program in Pompano, not for this part of Pompano, where parking can be put in some buildings, but for hotels that's really tough because they have their own security, and certainly with this sort of thing, we can't say just build us a floor parking. But this is evolving, and we're learning from you guys who take your time to come out and speak to us. So that's a good thing. Don't think we're not listening here. But I just needed to ask the question about whether he'd reached out or not. I think that because there's two projects under the same developer, a lot of angst here. And I truly hope that most of the angst is on the other project.
Yeah, I will say that while we are, so again, taking over the project and trying to be more active in the community, it's not necessarily that it's a naysayer all around. I think that the questions about the height and the way it's been presented to residents has led to a lot more questions than answers. And then because they are tied together somewhat and in their same sort of area, they impact the same sort of people, the same sort of neighbors. It is hard for some people to separate the two. Again, because I'm sort of reading through a pile of emails and it's been a but I appreciate that, yes. And so, but yes, thank you for sort of acknowledging it. Please give me a little bit of grace because I am also sort of just trying to form this where it's a positive thing, not a negative thing all around. And but at the same time, we would like to work with the city. We would like to work with the developer to make sure that everybody's needs are satisfied. We understand the developer would like to make money. We understand the city needs a hotel. We understand that the residents have a right to be concerned. We would just like to make sure that we try to make it as copacetic as possible. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
Okay. You need, okay, yeah, come on down.
Sorry to have to come all the way up here to say one little thing.
It's okay.
Coralyn Gibbs, 101 Briney Ave. I just would like to say that the Save Briney project is exciting, and it feels like we are part of a neighborhood, the we being the two twin towers, if you would. But I'm not aware that there's been any effort on your part to separate the north and south towers of Pompano Beach Club from the Briney Avenue development that's essentially has angst for the 585 project. No one from your project has contacted the two governances of the two towers who do work together most of the time to suggest you might have had a meeting to talk about the hotel. There's 4 of us here. There's almost 600 unit owners. We represent a neighborhood unto ourselves. A vertical neighborhood functions well. So I would like to ask, and thank you, Ms. Coleman, that other developers contact us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody on the board? You heard what was said, and you've got another project coming to us, so.
Trying.
Yeah.
Trying to meet.
Okay.
Trying.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? We're now closed for the public hearing, and we're at board deliberation. Any other questions? And if not, the chair will entertain a motion on item number 5.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Coleman.
I'd like to make a motion that the board finds competent and substantial evidence has been presented satisfying review standards for the major site plan as requested in this application, and I move approval of this item with the 1 through 6, A and D, and 7 conditions outlined in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? The applicant did previously say that his client is approving of the 7 conditions, so we're fine on that. Anything else? And if not, Bobby, call the roll on item number 5, please.
Carla Goldman,
Yes.
Joan Kovac,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Tundra King,
Yes.
Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Darlene Smith,
Yes.
Fred Stacer.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank everybody for coming out tonight. Okay, and with that, we move on to the next item, which is
Audience to be heard.
audience to be heard. Anybody have anything? You're done? You're done? Okay.
Enough for this evening.
Yeah, okay. And thanks for coming out. Okay, next item is board member discussion. Actually, do we have any reports by staff is actually next. Any reports of staff? Reports of staff. Max?
So at the last Planning and Zoning Board meeting, I presented an RV text amendment. There was some discussion about inserting a timeline on the, I'm like losing my mind. It was like, there were two exemptions. One had a specificity about it never, in a 24-hour period, no more than two 24-hour periods. And
When the lawyer do that? I'm too
Anyways,
tired.
we took that same language.
remember that now.
And applied it to the new exemption,
Push the button.
consistent with our discussion, and that's being presented into the commission item.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Is that
Looking at my notes, that's, yeah, I was worried about the definitions and how it translated across other things, because the idea at the end of it is enforceability, and I don't want there to be like a vagueness issue.
right? So there were separate exemptions, but our thinking, and at the time of drafting, we're like, oh, everything's great, whatever. But of course, then someone else reads it and sees something else. So the same time period that was provided for a previous exemption was just repeated into that exemption.
Okay.
So there's no more than two 24-hour periods in the month, I believe, is what it is.
Okay.
And I have a question. Maybe one of you can tell me, what has held up the second garage, the parking garage that we were going to build on A1A?
Ooh, we can't talk about that.
That,
We're in shade.
yeah,
We're in
that's,
shade right now.
Okay. Is it going to happen?
We're in the shade.
Okay. Okay.
You know what that means. You were a mayor. You know what that means. Don't ask,
Okay, another question.
okay? But I promise when I can tell you, I will. Okay? I'll call you. I swear.
Need it badly.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know. You don't think that I'm hearing about it. I am, believe me. Okay.
Every day.
Any other reports from staff? Is that it?
nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Bobby, anything?
Go Panthers.
Go Panthers, okay. Yeah. He's over there. I know he's watching it on one of the screens over there.
They give you 2 screens
okay.
for a reason.
Board member discussion. Mr. Fisher, look at him in his official position down there. Huh?
Yeah, just excited to serve with you,
You know
all.
what? You realize, of course, that we put the newcomers next to the attorney.
Keep me
for
out
a
of trouble.
reason.
Gotta keep me out of trouble.
'Cause if you say something that's going to get us in trouble, boom.
But the gentleman that served for 30 years still sat next to you to keep him out of trouble. 24.
Okay, so some people don't get out of timeout.
Very sad.
Just excited to serve permanently with you
people
all.
just stay in timeout.
Moving forward. So excited to be up here permanently. So
Thank you. Good to see you, sir. Mrs. Kovac,
Yes.
dear lady, friend.
I wanted to say a few words since this is my last meeting. Since 1982, I've been involved in municipal government in South Florida, either as an elected official or an appointed member of a city board. Planning and zoning boards have always been my favorite. It's really exciting to watch the development of a city evolve. In the 20 years I've served on Pompano's P&Z board, I've been happy to see that we've built a thriving, inviting beach area, even though there's lots of traffic down there. And that development has spurred other good developments along our shoreline, and I'm happy to see those. And I've been pleased that we have wisely used our extensive industrial area for good redevelopment. That was always a point of mine that I wanted to make. The members of this board have been good stewards of the development of this city, and we've been blessed to be led by the best chairman you could ask for in Fred Stacer.
That's sweet.
I think we have greatly benefited from working with the most gifted and capable staff of any city in Broward, and I really mean that. And that includes the counsel of our attorney, and thank you for all your help. So tonight ends my service as a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, and I ask that you all keep good watch over the future development of our city and strive for the very best uses of our land. And I've enjoyed working with all of you.
Mrs. Coleman, I bet you can't top that.
I wouldn't begin to try. But Ms. Smith asked me for a short report on the multimodal committee.
Yes.
I'll keep it very short. It's a late hour tonight. We are up and running, 14 members, city staff, consultants for the city, residents, business folk, all on that committee. We have pulled together our first part of the work program. We're right now waiting for output from Kimley Horn on the citywide transportation master plan that we, through me and another member, have been included in all of the interviews by Kimley Horn. Kimley Horn's now interviewed all the commissioners and such, and at our next meeting, we're supposed to have a comprehensive report on all of that to allow us to do some feedback there. We also have, while we're waiting for that, researched and formulated recommendations, and are formulating recommendations for advocacy and coordination partnerships. We're not quite ready to talk about any of those yet, but soon. They involve several, we've involved several city departments in these efforts, and are trying to build on some partnerships that we have, because we need to pull together. The right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing, and we're trying to make sure that we build a structure that does that. And I want to really thank Max, who's been an active member of the committee, and is extremely helpful to keep us from going too far afield sometimes on some of the land use and zoning aspects. But let's just say that we're trying to figure out how to be a more active partner with the railroad.
Just as long as you don't make them get quiet.
And we appreciate the opportunity to report back to you from time to time. We'll be glad to answer any questions if you've got any.
Okay. I bet you she does in a minute. Mrs. King, do you have anything for us tonight?
I don't have anything, but I'd just like to say thank you to Joan. It's been great learning from you, and we're going to miss you.
Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Carla, for your report. Look forward to the next one. That's great that you've got 14 on the committee. Fantastic. Joan, you brought tears to my eyes. We're going to miss you.
Thank you.
And we'll do our best to keep things going in the good direction that we've been going. And Paul, welcome. It's so nice to have you up here instead of in the back corner.
Yeah. Mr. Lewis.
I wanted to thank Joan for kind of bringing things full circle. I grew up in Davie, and you were my mayor, and so it's really a privilege to be able to serve on a board with you as well, this time later. So thank you for your service.
Thanks.
Okay. I can tell you that there's a lot of differences between Joan and I. They start with physical. Obviously, she's a little smaller than I am. And she is got a more temperate personality, let's say, than I do. And but one of the things that she did, she was a mentor. She acts like I, did whatever I did, but she really was a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And she had the kindest words to say for somebody who had been a mayor. She had the kindest words to say when I got beaten so badly in a city commission race, and she always encouraged me to continue my service. She about once a year she'd say, "So you're going to run in the next election?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm running from the next election. Yes, I'm running away from it." But she always had very kind words to say, and we had some wonderful conversations. I got to know her, I think, better after I lost, and I kind of knew that this was like where they were, as long as those 6 people that come here on Tuesday nights don't throw me away, I kind of just stick around and seem to do whatever I do. But she was always very encouraging. God, you must have been a wonderful mother. You're really a good person. And thank you. I really enjoyed all my time with you. I'm going to keep in touch. Yeah. And I know you're always interested in things, and you have always been a great service to this city, and obviously to Davie, even though somehow Derek Lewis got out of there, but whatever, not everybody was great in Davie, but anyway, just kidding, of course. Mr. Lewis is wonderful as well. Thank you very much. I don't think I have anything else, and with that, I'm going to use this button I got.
Use that.
You think it'll work?
I move we adjourn.
There you go. It worked.
Love that. It's so cute.
So Mr. Clausewitz is gone, but I still got a piece of him.
It's so cute.